Okay. It is Thursday, April 15th. I am Commissioner Ed Rothstein. We have an open session this morning. And what I thought we were going to do was go to open session this morning, have some time to go into a work session. I don't think we're going to have that time. I think we have a full agenda. So I do want to get started relatively quickly. And then at 1 p.m., we will reconvene for a budget work session. Before we do anything, as always, let's please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and take a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. I'll tell you, I love that pledge. Let's, I want to say quickly, but with quality, go through Priority Carol, and then we're going to get our updates from our health director and from our legislative liaison since Sine Die is over, and what the end results of the craziness in Annapolis occurred, and for us to look forward to. So with that, Priority Carol, Commissioner Boucher.
Thank you, President Rothstein. I want to start off by quickly covering two pieces on the front page of the Carroll County Times today. One is the Half-Acre Farm facility is open. They've modernized their rifle range and their pistol range to be in compliance with the modernized standards issued by the NRA, and they're under construction, making a new office building. The second article is about the 30% rise in overdoses in Carroll County. Once again, that is a very clear reminder that not only do we have the coronavirus pandemic to deal with, but the opioid epidemic is real. It's still out there, and sometimes paying too much attention to one can lead to a detriment of the other. So please be aware of it. And if you know anyone out there who's suffering from any mental illness issues or addiction, please help them seek some therapy or some counseling, because mental health issues, as I'm well aware in my family, can lead to addiction, suicide, or accidental death. So please be vigilant about that. And I encourage everyone with this being the gardening season, get out there and garden, enjoy yourself, and also exercise. We have numerous lovely trails to hike throughout the park system of Carroll County. And I'll end with welcoming on 3 new employees to the county. Brian Kernan, Emergency Management, Fiscal Plan Technician with Public Safety. Karen Gartrell, Plans, Permits Processor with Permits and Inspections. And David Magnugian, I hope I didn't slaughter your name, ADR Practitioner, Family Law, Circuit Court. Welcome aboard, and thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And I appreciate highlighting that, dealing with the opioids, because it's pretty, that was a pretty rough article to read with those statistics. Commissioner Wance.
Hi, how you doing?
Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
I'm here for you.
Not really.
Always.
You say that, but I don't know.
Believe me.
Real quick, we had, I just want to remind folks that Maryland 140 from Meadowbranch, not Meadowbranch, WMC Drive, Meadow Drive, where Burger King is. From there to the Route 27 bridge in Manchester, the state will be doing a lot of milling work there beginning Sunday. They're going to be doing it overnight, but here lately, 140, I don't know that there's ever downtime on 140 in that stretch. So just be aware that that's going on. They're doing it from 8P to 5A. So just making sure that. And just a reminder for folks to continue to be safe out there as we see outdoor activities take place and pick up because of the weather. Hopefully the weather will break. Make sure you do that. And 911 center, our primary center was I really wanted to make a huge announcement here, and it's working. I love it. The echo.
That one didn't work.
Our primary 911 center has been completely renovated And I want to make sure that we play this clip if we can. Chris?
It's playing, but because it's coming from my laptop, it's causing the feedback in
Oh,
here.
okay.
Yeah, and when I open the microphone.
All right. Well, anyway, you're seeing some of the photos here. It's going out over the air, isn't it, Chris? Yeah. Okay. Anyway, we'll get that on our website later on so folks can see it.
Absolutely.
But the transformation over there is quite amazing. And you guys know I've spoke about it often, how I feel about our first line of defense, the folks that answer our calls over there and talk people down off of cliffs, which is quite relevant because apparently there's a cliff that we're approaching or something. You all keep telling me that. I don't know, whatever. Anyway, that's all I have.
Okay, Commissioner Weaver.
Hey, just want to say yesterday I had the privilege of judging Region 4 Public Speaking Contest here in Carroll County, and I was really impressed with a lot of the students we have and their abilities and extemporaneous or prepared. We have some really fantastic students out here going to the state contest later. And also the Board of Education meeting last night, Commissioner Rothstein was at the first part of it. I was at the speaking contest and then came in. We switched halftime. But I just want to mention, celebrating student achievement is, I think, a highlight, especially this year. And they are going to have graduation ceremonies at the Shipley Arena. First time ever. And each high school is going to be graduating at Shipley. You have to get online, look at the dates and time. It's going to be a little different, but they're trying to keep some normality to it and celebrate the achievements of the students. So,
Okay. Commissioner Frazier.
Really don't have anything new from Tuesday when we met, but get out, enjoy the spring weather, enjoy Carroll County's recreational activities.
Okay, and for me, as it was shared, I was at the Board of Ed meeting for the first hour. It was an opportunity to recognize two amazing folks, nurse, is it Linda?
Lynn Runk.
Lynn Runk and Debbie Harvey from Century High School. Those, along with the principal and others, were there to save a young man's life. He fell out during exercises, and for some reason, his heart stopped. They did chest compressions. They got an AED. They shocked him. What seemed to be an eternity for them was 8 minutes of response from Winfield to take this young gentleman and get him to the hospital. And he was also there last night. It was an amazing way to finish the day and recognizing them. And I think the sentiment all around was it was the right people in the right place to include this young gentleman, because if he was not there or if he was at home, he would not have received that life-saving support necessary. I've said it often, the military, we say that one team, one fight. There is no better example of that than what I heard and listened to last night. So although I was able to give them certificates from us and coins and all that kind of fun stuff, the best thing I could just say is thank you. And, there's a reason for everything. So I just want to share that.
I had
Please.
the privilege of working with Lynn Runk for years, and she's a phenomenal nurse. And the SRO there is here again phenomenal. So,
Yeah.
And I actually know the principal there very well. A good team, the right place, right time, saved the kid's life.
I think the sheriff, in placing the SROs specifically to where they are, I don't know if it's by design or not, but it's like the SROs fit the character and the community of those schools. And he is so thankful for the board's decisions that have been made in getting the SROs in place. So I was not a part of those decisions. And I just, again, say thank you for that as well, because that, saved that young man's life. Okay.
And a huge shout out to the school nurses that are often overlooked in the system. And honestly, there were some pretty nasty statements said about them last year as we were by some people over across the way. So a huge shout out to them because they are doing amazing work every single day.
Absolutely. Okay, any state directives, anything from MACO that, from governor's office I haven't seen this last week?
All is quiet, I believe.
I haven't heard about a press conference lately either. Is there one coming up?
No, I don't think so.
So,
I think he's busy traveling around to all the mass vaccination sites.
and I
So,
think the mass vaccination sites, I think, are being open to the public in walk-in basis from either 16 or 18 up. So they've really opened the aperture on the mass vaccinations. Let's move on. It looks like, fortunately, we have Ms. Maggie on. And not saying that I'm against Mr. Ed, but Maggie, why don't you walk us through some of the statistics and tell us the story about what's going on from your.
All right. Good morning, commissioners. Yes, Ed was called away unexpectedly to a meeting with FEMA to discuss their mobile strike teams. And so he asked me to step in this morning. So we'll just give you a quick update, my always quick version of the update. This is the graph. I actually brought this to the school board last night since this, oh, sorry. Yeah, you're still sharing. So hang on, it'll be up in just a second. I also addressed the school board last night, also heard that very moving story at the beginning. That was an incredible story to hear about the student whose life was saved. I have a 17-year-old myself, so definitely was a moving story and amazing to hear how everybody responded. All right, let me know when you can see. Oh, hang on. There we go. Waiting for that to, all right. Hopefully you can now see the graphs. There you go. Okay, so this is a graph that you had asked us to put together. And so for the first time, we did present it to the school board last night as well. It just kind of shows that level of community transmission is, still quite high. The positivity rate is, still only considered moderate, so not quite as high. But just to note this, the CDC did change their guidance a little bit regarding these two metrics to say two things I noted. One, if the two metrics don't really match, which in this case they don't match, since the positivity rate puts us at a moderate rate and the case rate puts us at a high rate of transmission, to follow the higher one. So in this case, we would follow the high transmission guidelines. But the guidelines have really softened. The CDC really is emphasizing that schools should remain open as much as possible. And the guidance really isn't as much to close as to just modify and just ensure that all the steps are being taken to reduce transmission as much as possible in school settings. So really emphasizing the distance between students and teachers, and the use of masks and regular cleaning and things like that. So we discussed that a little bit last night on the school board meeting as well. Here are our probable cases. You've seen this, kind of going back up. It's really kind of a striking graph to see the trends in our community. It has leveled off a little bit in the last week, which is good to see. And I would say, based on the trends this week, it looks like we have a little fewer cases this week. So hopefully by the end of the week, we'll see that starting to go back down. Still seeing a really large number of those probable cases, which, as you know, are the ones that are not yet PCR confirmed, and that's just a little bit, just changes the numbers a little bit. And in some cases, PCR tests are required for notifying folks of outbreaks and things like that. And so we always, it's always good to get PCR confirmed testing like they have at the Ag Center when possible. Here's our 14-day rolling average, just as you can see, just that same trend of that we're in another little wave, and hopefully it's leveling off. The COVID cases by age, we had seen, I think we also discussed how the older age groups who are, more thoroughly vaccinated at this point, we're going down. And this last week, there's a little blip, and it looks like the 65 and up is going up. And the other groups are coming down just a little bit, but hopefully that's just a little blip in the road for this week. The hospitalizations have gone up, and I've been trying to post them as often as we get them on the website. And, they have had a lot of patients, and they have had a lot of COVID patients. And so we're watching that closely to see how that continues, but it definitely is another, after that little break that we got there, it's definitely, again, a higher number of people being hospitalized for COVID in our community. Hospitalizations and deaths, this is just over time. So this is, this is cumulative, all of the cases, but it does, just continue to show that the trend is that that older adults are hospitalized more often, but we have seen, some increases in both of those lower age groups. There have been, recent hospitalizations in younger adults and youth. The deaths, again, that same pattern. We saw a larger spike around the holidays. We saw that kind of go down and even decrease to a week where we didn't have any deaths, and then it's gone back up again. So we're still seeing a significant number of community deaths from COVID. Testing, this really hasn't been updated since last week. We continue to see pretty low numbers of tests, and encourage people to use that testing site if they need to get tested. It is, free. It is, and it is the PCR test. It's 9 to 12. It's 10 to 12 on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays currently at the Farm Museum, but do check the website in case there are any changes.
Thanks.
And the most exciting news this week, of course, is that we are, as of Monday in phase 3, all Marylanders aged 16 and up are eligible to receive the vaccine. I do want to note, as we've said before, that we did have a limited amount of Pfizer, so we were able to, for a short period of time, vaccinate some folks who were 16 and 17, and we tried to reach out to people on our list who had health conditions to ensure that people who were in those age groups who had health conditions that put them at higher risk of COVID did get vaccinated while we had the Pfizer, but now we do not have any more Pfizer for first doses, and so we are unable to, at the health department, vaccinate people who are 16 and 17 years of age, trying to help people find resources to find vaccines for that age group. Here's our vaccine slide. It's getting tight. They're a little harder to see those numbers, but you can see we continue to use our allocations and get a lot of people vaccinated. We have now vaccinated over 20,000 people through the health department, which I think is very exciting, and almost 13,000 second doses as well. And the most exciting thing I think on this slide is that we have vaccinated almost 40% of the total county population has been vaccinated at some site. So I think that's a really exciting number. I think that's really great progress to see in our community. You'll also note here, maybe the last green line there is only 1,100 doses. So it's a lower number of doses we're receiving this week. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a couple of slides. Here's the graph where we talk about the different groups. This is I guess it just got a little bit updated this week. I think the school numbers still need to be updated, but just showing all the groups and how we're continuing to reach as we're expanding our opening. We are reaching more and more people in those lower groups, and vaccinating more and more people in even the healthy adults age 16 to 64. So that's exciting to see those numbers go up. And this is the graph of the racial breakdown of the older adults that we've been able to reach. We haven't looked at the younger numbers yet, but we are continuing to increase these numbers, but continuing to look mostly at the Hispanic population and want to we've been talking about doing outreach to them. We were able to work with St. John's to schedule a clinic for the Hispanic community on Sunday, April 25th. So that's coming up soon. And we're working with community partners and local churches to fill that clinic with people who speak Spanish, hoping that will have a lot of resources available in Spanish and registration available in Spanish to help that population access vaccination. So I just want to talk a little bit about the scheduled clinics. We have several clinics scheduled, but they are full right now. Because of the J&J vaccine being on pause. We didn't have very much of it, but we're obviously not using that right now. So we had to reallocate some of our Moderna vaccine to cover some of those clinics that we had planned. And we are also receiving less vaccine this week. So we were not able to offer open registration for the community this week. We were hoping to put up those links again today, but we unfortunately won't be offering any open spaces right now. We don't have any other clinics scheduled, and those open clinics we have are full. So we will hope to be back on track next week with those open registration links for the community. And I realize I haven't given you any chance to ask questions, so hopefully you're holding on to them. But just a little bit about the J&J vaccine. This is also on our website. I know this is quite a busy slide here, but the CDC and the FDA recommended a pause in the use of the J&J vaccine, and the Maryland Department of Health, ordered all of our sites to stop using the J&J vaccine. So we're pausing in our use of it. We had one scheduled J&J clinic where we used Moderna instead. It is affecting how much vaccine we're receiving from the state. We only had one J&J clinic at all, and that was in March, early March. And so that was several weeks ago. So we haven't had any reports of this kind of side effect happening in Carroll County, and that has been confirmed. So this type of side effect hasn't been seen with the other vaccines. They have a different technology, that mRNA technology, and they have not had this issue. Just want to let people know this is extremely rare. Right now they're looking at 6 cases in almost 7 million vaccine administrations. So it's extremely rare. And the reason that they're pausing it is to just take a look and see if there are certain groups that maybe should not get this vaccine, or certain treatments that would help with this unusual disorder in order to treat it when it happens in these rare cases. And just a last note, if anybody has received the J&J vaccine at any site in the last few weeks, and they develop any of these symptoms, severe headache, abdominal pain, leg pain, or shortness of breath, they should talk to their provider as soon as possible and let them know that they have the J&J vaccine. So just out of an abundance of caution, just letting folks know that if they have any of those symptoms and have had the J&J vaccine, they should talk to their provider. All right, now I'll stop talking and let you ask any questions you may have.
Okay.
Ms. Coons, I want to thank you for that last public service announcement you gave there. That was very important to give reassurance to the people out there who have had that J&J vaccine. Also, I'm very pleased to see the numbers of the 75 plus people being vaccinated were around 85%. That's phenomenal. And now we're digging into the 60 and up. So keep up the good job. Thank you very much for you and everyone over.
I forgot to make the point. Thank you, Commissioner. I do want to make the point that we are continuing to take information from folks who are 65 and up, anybody who has trouble registering, who would need assistance registering. We're taking down that information, and we'll get back to folks next week when we have open clinic links. So we are still committed to those high priority groups. We're still continue to find folks in the older adult age ranges who want to be vaccinated, and we are committed to making sure that we get them into our clinics as soon as possible.
Okay. Any other?
I suddenly have all those symptoms and didn't even have the J&J vaccine. I'm sorry.
This is going to be a long day. Okay. Any other relevant questions or comments?
Oh, okay.
Hearing none, really appreciate all the work you and the team are doing, Maggie. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great meeting.
We'll try. Okay. Let's now get an update from Mr. Mike Fowler, the one, the only.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good
We hit the
morning.
finish line. What a long, strange trip it's been. Just a couple of notes on this session. Obviously, completely virtual. Amazingly, they made through the entire session without any health issues. They had a brief scare on the Senate side, but it was from some false positive tests. So I think a lot of credit has to go out to the staff down there to keep that incredibly complex and large operation going without a hitch. I know that the members of the General Assembly have made it clear that they didn't enjoy all the work and none of the fun. No balloons or confetti at the end, none of the late nights down on Main Street in Annapolis. So they made it through, but the important thing is they tended to business. So about 35% of the bills that were submitted were passed. And we had a lower number of bills submitted this year for obvious reasons. I thought what I'd do is just sort of stick to our script of trying to break these bills by topic and go through them and talk about which ones were successful, which ones were not, and what's important in them to the county. So Early on, of course, the Relief Act was passed. We know that was one of the first things they did, and got a lot of money out into the state, both for businesses and individuals. One of the bills that initially came in that was very, very heavy and concerning was the Essential Workers Protection Act. It was noted early on that the bill probably needed a lot of work, and they did put a lot of work into it. It was amended down very significantly. I think I talked about it last week, and it didn't really change much from that point. The things that are in there, the ability to refuse work, that's now limited to the same things that are currently in MOSHA. Hazard pay was eliminated, and the essential workers designation is limited to what state and federal governments recognize. You might remember there was about 6 pages of, they spell out all of the industries and the positions within those industries that would be considered essential, and that had a lot of head spinning. So that bill was knocked down considerably and did pass. All of the workmen's compensation bills related to COVID did not move. That was a good thing. The Maryland Electricians Act, this has been coming back each session for probably 7, 8, 9 years. I think it finally passed this year, probably from as much from sheer exhaustion as anything. But it essentially reorganizes the way electricians are credentialed in the state. It creates a statewide licensing program. So the state issues the licenses, the local boards are able to issue registrations. So they can still charge fees for those registrations, and they still reserve the right to regulate the industry up to revoking a license. That's only within the power of the state. So that finally made it across the finish line this year. Local tax relief for working families. That was originally proposed by Anne Arundel County. They wanted to raise their income tax to 3.5% above what's the current cap of 3.2%. And that was unsuccessful. They amended that out. So it raises the floor, the minimum a county can charge on income tax is 2.25 because that's the lowest now any county charges. It authorizes the county to establish tax brackets. The brackets for higher income cannot be lower than that for lower income, but in totality, the effort needs to be revenue neutral. I mentioned the amusement tax. There was a proposal to exempt certain things from the amusement tax. That did not move forward. State and local government institutions of higher education, teleworking. So that was initially proposed as a program where you would be required to have people telework. A lot of restrictions in there. That's sort of been pared back. The requirement now for local governments is to basically establish a program and develop the policies and guidelines, and then in your discretion, maximize the number of eligible employees that can participate in teleworking. It does also establish a grant program for businesses to establish and enact these plans. So I thought that was an interesting twist there toward the end. As we mentioned, legalization of marijuana did not move forward. I would not be surprised if we don't see that back in earnest next year. Bill, procurement for the prevailing wage. This was one where currently, if your project is funded by 50% or more of state funding, or more than 500,000 of state funding, you must pay prevailing wage. Those levels have been knocked in half now. So if you have a project with 25% or more, or you have a project that's at least 250,000 of state funding, you must pay prevailing wage. It does exclude projects that are a result of either a House of Delegates or a senator's initiative. So those types of projects will be exempt. One problematic bill was this procurement bill, which would require local procurement officers to follow state rules in procurement, would have added a lot of additional steps and very burdensome. That did not move forward. So that was a good thing. It was a good thing. Some of you expressed some concerns about this alcoholic beverages bill, the one that would sort of codify what these restaurants are able to do now in doing curbside and delivery of alcoholic beverages, including mixed drinks. That was amended and did pass. It's now enabling. So a local board can take the initiative to essentially rewrite their regulation to allow this to move forward, but it does not require them to do so. On the environment and land use side, so the big climate bill did not move forward. It was originally proposed in the Senate. There was a cross-file in the House, but Senator Pinsky is the chair of Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs. It was essentially his bill. When it got to the House, they started paring it back. He wanted to get to 65% of baseline greenhouse gas emissions by, I think, 2035. And the state came in the middle of the session with their plan, which would be 50%. So the House tried to lower it to 50%. They amended on the Blue Ribbon Solar Land Use Commission to the bill. So it really eventually they couldn't get across the finish line with it. Senator Pinsky was very upset that the bill had been amended so heavily in the House, so it did not pass. But the next bill, the Tree Solutions Act of 2021, actually part of the climate bill was amended on there. So initially, this bill had been about forest mitigation in the more urban counties, particularly Prince George's, Montgomery, who have the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission as their zoning land use organization. They're running out of space to do forest mitigation. So they've been using a process where they preserve existing forest and then use that as a bank to get credits for disturbances, for development disturbances. The Attorney General put out a letter that said that was not in the spirit and intent of the law. So that was an effort to codify that so they could continue development work in those counties. We do not do that here in Carroll. We do forest banks where we plant trees and then the credits are given out of those. So it is a no net loss as the state law prescribes. But they added the condition of planting 5 million trees in the next 10 years. You'll remember that was part of the climate bill. So that's going to move forward in the Tree Solutions Act, been renamed now, Tree Solutions Act 2021. The paint stewardship bill, which would require producers to establish a retail recycling plan, that did not go forward. That would have taken a little bit of pressure, I think, off of counties that perform that function now, but that didn't move forward. Stormwater management regulations and watershed implementation plans. This is a bill that would update stormwater regulations every 5 years to include the latest data. Don't quote me on the years, but I think that the data that's used now is getting pretty old. So there's an intent to update those plans. Our concern initially was the way the bill was originally written, that it could interfere with the stormwater permit that's currently pending. But the way the bill has been amended, that timing shouldn't be an issue now. It shouldn't impact the issuance of that permit, other than the normal hurdles that one typically faces in that process. An interesting bill that made it across the line at the very end of the session was a private well safety program. So this requires rental properties that are served by a private well to have that well tested every 3 years. If it exceeds the standards, the remediation has to occur within 60 days. If it can't get remediated, the landlord has to provide a continuous supply of potable water until the remediation is done. And it also allows the tenant to terminate the lease. This was a heavily debated bill that I have to say in the last probably 2 hours finally made it across the finish line in the House. I think we talked about the glyphosate, the Roundup ban early on. That did not move forward, so that's not going to be an issue. Interestingly, the Plastic Bag Reduction Act did not make it through. It didn't come out of the Senate committee, so that died this year. Preservation of agricultural land, I talked a little bit about that. They have established a statewide goal of preserving over 1 million acres by 2030. I think that, not sure of the numbers, but I think they said we're about 80 to 85% of the way there. And this leverages existing programs both at the state and local level. So the programs that you all are using to preserve ag land are contributing to that. One of the bills that we talked about a lot last year, Commissioner Rothstein will remember, had to do with on-site wastewater disposal, sewer, septic tank legislation. Both of those came back this year. The first one passed, which is the one that simply establishes a licensing system for inspectors. And the bill is not prescriptive. It puts the obligation to develop regulations on the Maryland Department of the Environment. The bill that failed was the one that was very, very extensive. The bill itself really outlined all of the aspects of licensing and inspection, and did not, it would obviously have to go for regulations, but it was very, very prescriptive in all of the things that it spelled out. Mostly creating another bureaucracy with a regulatory board. That did not move forward. And that was the one, interestingly, Commissioner, if you'll remember, one of Ms. Grundy's concerns was about a code of ethics that concerned that the same people that inspect a septic system and could fail that septic system may also be a company that could install a new system. So she was concerned about that. That code of ethics requirement was actually in the bill that failed. It's not in the bill that passed. So I thought that was interesting. I'll have to keep an eye on that and see how that does in the regulatory process.
Just real quick, I appreciate that update, because there is a concern of overregulation and putting the fox in the hen house type of scenario. But the comment you made a minute ago about ag preservation, I think a few of us looked at each other is there money associated with that state program that they're increasing, or what type more details do you have, if any, on that?
Yeah, I don't believe that it assigned any dollars. It identified the programs that would be used to do that. And I think, if I remember correctly, there were maybe 5 or 6 existing programs in the state that they would be using, but I didn't see any additional dollars. I can certainly go back and double back on that.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful if you do, because obviously, well, you know how important ag preservation is to us, and putting, funds towards it I'd be curious, I think we all should be, if the state is willing to put money where their mouth is as well. So, or additional money. So,
Yeah,
thanks.
I'll get into more details on that. I do know that they named the existing funds that are out there doing this. So I'll double back.
Okay.
On the education front, so we know the collective bargaining bill did pass. And I think I mentioned to you, there's the ability for the Board of Commissioners, when presented with a funding request, if you're not able to meet that funding request, you can reject it and they would have to go back and renegotiate. So I think that's maybe the silver lining in the whole thing. But I think that the bill was able to move forward in some part because of the restoration of CADE funding, which would tend to relieve some of the funding pressure on the colleges. So I think some of the members of the General Assembly sort of stepped back a little bit. There were a lot of concerns, mostly from the minority party, about the impacts on their local community colleges. But the bill did pass. So the next bill is about the restoration of the CADE funding. So I'm not sure how much you know. You probably know a lot more than I do about this, but the CADE funding is based on funding for four-year colleges in the state. And I think there was some work done to move some of the funding to other parts of the budget, which affected community colleges. This bill now says that any funding to the four-year colleges, no matter where it is in the budget, counts toward the CADE formula. So that's what they mean with the restoration of CADE funding. So that one passed. And then, of course, the Kerwin bill, they had to pass another bill because the original Kerwin bill, Blueprint for Maryland's Future, was vetoed by the governor. So that set things back a year. They had to pass another bill to sort of readjust those dates and a little bit of the funding associated with the out years on that. And that went through, obviously. Elections is where a lot of changes were made. And I think there is a price tag with that. Unfortunately, the bill that Mako was trying to move, which would have codified this 50-50 funding relationship between the state and the local boards of elections, didn't move forward. So still operating on that I guess gentleman's agreement, gentlewoman's agreement, whatever you want to call it, handshake about 20 years ago that is still being used for that. But there's no obligation on the state to observe that, certainly not in law. So early voting centers, those hours now are consistent regardless of what election we're talking about. They are now 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. The bill about post-election tabulation audits, that was one that the Board of Elections was concerned about being expensive. That did not move forward. The Mail-in Voting Enhancement Act, that required more drop boxes. Some additional technology enhancement would be required to make necessary notifications to voters. It had a provision for surveillance of drop boxes. That failed, but some of that was amended over into the next bill, which is the permanent absentee ballot list. And I mentioned to you about this, that they want to create a list where voters can be considered permanently absentee voting status. So never have to go into a polling place again. You have to request that permanence. There are several steps that are put in place to refine that list periodically. It does require additional communications to voters, so some technology enhancements. And this one requires the video surveillance is back in this one. So if a drop box is placed, it has to have 24-hour video surveillance. If it's in a place, let's say, a school or a community center that has video surveillance already, that video has to be made available to the Board of Elections. That will, I think, probably play into where these are located, which is the next bill. This is early voting centers, the number required. So last year, there was a bill that would modify the thresholds that would serve to increase by 1 for Carroll County early voting centers from 2 to 3. I think there was an expectation that the number of registered voters would exceed that threshold anyway, which was, I think last year was 125,000. In this bill, that threshold was lowered to 100,000. So between 100 and 200,000 registered voters, 3 centers are required. There is an option for an additional center if the Board of Elections and the Board of Commissioners agree on that. But it sets some guidelines for locating these centers. So there's probably going to have to be a reevaluation done. The guidelines are historically disenfranchised communities need to be considered, the proximity to areas of dense voter registration, proximity to public transportation, an equitable distribution of the centers, which is not defined, and then trying to maximize participation by locating in a community centers or large gathering places. So some places that's large and able to accommodate and people are familiar with. The Election Reform Act, we mentioned it briefly. That was a very extensive bill, very expensive bill, and collapsed under its own weight, essentially, is probably the best way to describe that. The Value My Vote Act, which passed, requires voter registration applications given to everyone who is released from detention. Correctional facilities have to communicate registration requirements and voting rights to eligible voters at least 30 days before the deadline. And by eligible voters, they mean anyone who is incarcerated who has the right to vote. Felons who are currently serving a sentence, including probation, they are not allowed to vote. Misdemeanors, incarceration, probation, for anything like that, they are considered eligible voters. So that was extended to that group of citizens. And finally, there was a bill that would require reporting by providers if there was any foreign component of hardware or software present in a voting system. It would need to be reported to the state. That failed toward the end of Senate session as well. Are we good so far? Any questions up to this point? Okay, good.
Going public safety.
Public safety, here comes the big one. So
Yep.
School resource officers, none of those bills passed. So the SRO program remains in place as it has been. There's a bill that would require local jails to provide separate housing for inmates with mental illness when state beds were unavailable. I think 15 days was the threshold. If they were going to be held beyond 15 days, they had to create this separate housing. And that's really because the state beds were not available. So I think that argument finally resonated. And interesting, I read an article on this very subject about the deinstitutionalizing of this population and how we've created a new institution, basically, which is a combination of jails, hospitals, and the streets. So just a little bit added there, but that bill did not move forward. So that would have been an extra cost to the detention center. The 911 bills, talking about expanding 911 board membership to include more local participation, establishing training for the 911 specialists, and creating enforcement regime for Kerry's Law, which is the law that says every individual telephone in any setting. So you think of a hotel, large office building, each of those individual lines must be able to call directly to 911. So that was all included in that bill which passed. Also, the bill that created, or I should say elevated, MEMA, the Maryland Emergency Management Agency, to a cabinet level department passed. And with that, the transfer of the 911 board goes to the newly created Department of Emergency Management. The paramedics and vaccine administration, that passed. That enables paramedics to participate in vaccination outreach programs. So it's COVID-19, the flu, hepatitis B, tuberculous skin tests, but they have to be part of a community outreach program. They can't be delivered in an emergency setting. One of the bills about emergency service transporters reimbursement, it would reimburse for transport to a non-hospital facility or just for providing on-site care. Right now, the reimbursement is only provided if they're transported to a hospital. So unfortunately, I should say fortunately, that did pass. Excuse me, that failed. It was the vaccine administration that passed. So the transportation failed. Another bill, immigration was a hotly debated subject, particularly on the Senate floor. This is a bill that would prohibit law enforcement from communicating immigrant status to federal authorities unless the federal authorities have a warrant in place. So on traffic stops, police will not be able to ask immigration status. There was also a bill, I don't have it on my report, but because it doesn't affect Carroll County, but there are 3 counties that currently house detainees for ICE. They have contracts with Immigration and Customs Enforcement. They're Frederick, Worcester, and Howard. And a bill was passed that would prevent that program, would prevent them from participating in that program. That was, again, was a very hotly contested bill, particularly Worcester County. It's very, apparently it's a big part of their budget. But that bill was passed that would prevent that program from going forward. Let's see, where are we? Yes, parole, life imprisonment. So the governor has been removed from the parole process. It enlarges the parole commission and it increases the ability to qualify for parole on a life sentence from 15 to 20 years if the individual is convicted after October of this year. Right now it's 15 years. The COVID-19 testing, tracing, vaccination, that uses federal funding for grants to local jurisdictions, would establish a plan for testing, for contract tracing, and vaccinations. It's interesting. I think this is really actually coming late to the party, but I think it puts a clear framework around this and also provides the funding through the federal dollars for this. And it sunsets after 2022. They have the ability to reinstate portions of it, obviously, but it'll sunset after 2022. The local health department funding, it looked like it was not going to make it. They did pass it, and they believe that with the federal dollars coming in, that some of the pressure on the health departments would be relieved in the short term. So beginning in 2025, they will fund the health departments at $70 million, and that's compared to 49.5 from the 2018 fiscal year. In 2026, they increase it to 80, and then 27, it resets back to the standard formula of increases for inflation and population growth within the county. Senator Hester's Food System Resiliency Council passed. That's a council that will comprise basically all of the areas around food insecurity and looking, can't come up with the word, but the process where food finds its way to the table. And I think an interesting aspect of that is looking to leverage and expand local food production and markets for local food production. So now we're going to move into the policing bills. I gave you a sort of a summary on that a couple of days ago, but I thought we'd work through mostly the House Bill 670, which is the one that really puts that you have to be involved in creating these boards and committees. But Senate Bill 71, which was it sets up the body camera regime, body worn cameras for all officers by July 2025. This defines use of force, talks about an intervention system for officers at risk of the use of excessive force, requires employee assistance programs to include mental health consultations. So that's a bill that really goes to policing directly. Senate Bill 178 is search warrants and inspections of records of police misconduct. So it sets conditions around serving warrants. It opens up officer records to discovery through the Public Information Act. It requires annual reports to the state by the sheriff departments on data around warrants and arrests, firearm discharges, a lot of the activities of police in any given year. And then copies have to go to the local government and to the governor's office as well. The Maryland Police Accountability Act, the Office of State Prosecutor. So police forces can no longer acquire surplus military equipment. It establishes an independent investigative unit within the Office of the Attorney General to investigate police-involved civilian deaths. So that's a new wrinkle. And so we'll refer the report to the local state's attorney for potential prosecution. The one that I think affects you the most is the police discipline and law enforcement programs and procedures law. So it prescribes procedures. There are some policing activities in here. It prescribes procedures for traffic stops. It has the education assistance component in that. It increases the tort liability caps for officer misconduct. So right now, they're 400 for an individual, 800 total. They go to 890,000 for an individual and 1.335 million for wrongful death. So your tort insurance is going to increase, obviously. Now, this bill also prescribes the disciplinary process. So you've got to establish a fund that covers both county and municipal processes. And that's 3 organizations: the Police Accountability Board, the Administrative Charging Committee, and the trial board. So you have some input on all of these. So the Police Accountability Board, this is the board that oversees policing in the county. You establish the membership of this, and that is not prescribed in the bill, with the exception of you can't have an active police officer, and where practicable, the board must reflect diversity of the county. You have to appoint a chair, and you have to establish record-keeping procedures. So this board will submit annual reports to the state on policing in the county, recommend policies to improve it, and they are one of the bodies that accept civilian complaints. Civilian complaints can also be made directly to the sheriff's office. So that's really the extent of how this board is described in the bill. It's essentially an oversight board for policing in the county that you have to put together. Then we have the administrative charging committee. That has the chair of the Police Accountability Board. It has 2 civilians selected by that board, and it has 2 civilians selected by the Board of Commissioners. So this committee, when a complaint goes to, if it goes to the Accountability Board, it gets referred to the police agency. If it goes directly to the sheriff's office, they will do the investigation of the complaint. They will send those files to the administrative charging committee, which then conducts its own independent investigation. It has the authority to interview witnesses, to subpoena witnesses. They will then make a determination of these 2 terms, one of these 2 terms, either an officer is administratively charged or not administratively charged. If he is administratively charged, there's going to be a disciplinary matrix that the Police Training and Standards Commission puts together. That it's basically a plug and play. The committee will recommend the discipline to the sheriff, and I'm going to talk about how we are in Carroll County. So would be referred to the sheriff. The sheriff can then accept that discipline for that officer, or the sheriff can impose a stricter discipline than the committee recommends. If the officer is not administratively charged, then they have to determine one of 2 things for that officer. He's either exonerated, which means he acted in accordance with the law and with policy, or the allegations are unfounded. They are not supported by fact. Regardless of that, that stays on the officer's record and becomes discoverable. I think under the Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights, which is repealed by this, that would have been treated differently. That would have been a personnel record and would not have been discoverable. Now, even if it's a frivolous allegation that is not supported by the facts, it's still discoverable. So if the officer, yes,
What happens if he's exonerated? Is that still discoverable?
yes, yes,
That's bad.
yep. Not that I'm aware of, no other state employee is subject to that. So if the officer doesn't accept that discipline, he can seek a trial board review. So here's the 3rd organization. This trial board is comprised of either an active or a retired judge selected by the Board of Commissioners, a civilian who's not a member of the Administrative Charging Committee, who is selected by the Police Accountability Board, the Oversight Board, and an officer of equivalent rank to the officer that is charged, and he is selected by the sheriff. So the disciplined officer going through the trial board, if he doesn't agree with what the trial board imposes, then he still has the ability to appeal in court. So it sets out the trial board sets out conditions under which the disciplined officer can be either suspended or terminated, prescribes the rights the officer has when he's subjected to either complaints or discipline, or charged with a crime, either felony or misdemeanor. The bill talks about records of investigations and resulting discipline may not be expunged from the officer's records. So all of this stays with the officer throughout. So if that officer has 20 frivolous complaints against him, of which he's been exonerated in each one, they still remain on his record. There's going to be a creation of a statewide database to track officer decertifications for violation of use of force. You may remember, I think on the Eastern Shore, there was a civilian death, and that officer had apparently been decertified or either decertified or had a record, a blemished record in the state of Delaware. I think they want to create this database to track officers so they're not moving from department to department. That's been a complaint of the advocates of these policies. And so there's also a defunding aspect of this. There is reporting of data by the police agency to the Training and Standards Commission. If that data reporting is not in compliance, grants are withheld. If the agency is found in violation of use of force standards, it's also subject to the withholding of state grants. So what that means is not specific in the bill. There's a lot in this bill that is not spelled out. And the understanding is that the commission, the Police Training and Standards Commission, sort of gets now expanded. In one of these bills, if not this one, there's also expansion of that commission. It looks like they will be the ones that will put all of this together.
And Mike,
There's an article in The Sun I would refer you to today that has a lot of commentary from police chiefs across the state talking about the uncertainty around all this. So still a lot of things that need to be answered. It does take effect July 1st of 2022.
hey, Mike,
So,
can you hear me?
yes.
Just take a pause for a second because I don't know. I just really am feeling very uncomfortable with what you just shared. It's again, I'm just using my past experiences and unfortunately have seen actions go overboard, into these witch hunt type of approaches, taking responsibility and authority away from the on the ground leaders and commanders. And this really is an uneasy situation because we can sit here all we want and say we support our police force and our sheriff's department, but we don't have that authority as it's being taken away from us with what you just described. And that really is an uneasy feeling, at least in my perspective. I don't know, because these blemishes, as you say, being put on files, it's just it's a bad situation. It's a recipe for disaster. And why would I want to be a policeman if I have to look over my shoulder every time I do something, and if there's going to end up being a blemish? I mean, we need to have faith in our police officers. And, I'm looking at Commissioner Wentz and our men and women, as firefighters in doing what's right, all the time. Mistakes may happen, but you got to be, I don't know. I just feel it's not blind faith, but I got to have faith that they're going to do what's right. And I'm not sure why people would want to be put into that position, at least that's my 2 cents. I mean, I don't know if anybody has anything.
This is almost like some social media. You can say anything and now it stays on your record.
Yeah.
It's an unfortunate set of circumstances here. It sets up layers and layers of bureaucracy.
Yeah.
Those layers in which we always want to remove. But we've allowed Annapolis now to add layers and layers. And, there's some really important things here that we're going to have to consider. And that is the parameters surrounding who we're going to put on all these boards. Everybody knows that we have trouble finding anybody to do these boards.
Yes,
and who are you going to find in a jurisdiction like Carroll, and there's others in the rural counties,
Yep.
that's going to want to sit
Yep.
on a board that does this to law enforcement? Where in the world are you going to find these people? And if you do find them, they probably shouldn't be on that board.
That's right. And no, you're right. I mean, this is
So this
Yeah.
is
I'm sorry.
incredibly, and I use this word a lot, but I'm going to add incredibly now, absurd.
I knew that word was coming.
It is, Dana. It's ridiculous.
No,
But it's
Yeah,
beyond
the word
absurd.
coming.
It is,
It
it is.
takes away from the elected, the way in which our sheriff is. Why even elect the sheriff now?
Yeah.
Really, what's the point?
We're being forced into a Baltimore County, Prince George's County, Montgomery County way of thinking, and it minimizes Carroll County. Like you said, these levels of bureaucracy. Why would I want to be a policeman or woman at this point if I have to be looking over my shoulder all the time in every freaking thing I do?
Yeah, it's
And
ridiculous. And I thought I was
it is.
hopeful. I know you don't like that, but I was
No,
hopeful that this would be enacted in like 23 or 24, but it's not. So the onus of putting people on these ridiculous boards is going to be on us.
And Mike, you also talked about funding this. We have to fund the boards. I guess that's what you meant. Is there any guidelines on how much funding this is going to take, or nothing
No,
yet?
there isn't. No.
Are they going to come out with some guidelines for that? Because we obviously have to put it in our budget.
Yeah, that's what the Training and Standards Commission will be doing. Yes.
again, we're sitting here and we can say, we support you, Sheriff DeWeese, and we support every man and woman in blue. That's great. But that doesn't mean much when this is, now enforced. I
Yeah.
mean,
We support you, but now we got to put
Yeah,
people on boards that,
exactly.
say otherwise.
right.
It's just I
It-
don't know.
It's painful. It is absurd. It's extremely painful when we're looked at having responsibility, but the authority is taken away from us because of this, like you said, levels of bureaucracy.
When does this take effect? It's not this July, it's next July. Is that correct?
22, correct.
So we have at least a little time, but it's still.
Well, yeah, we have a year to message. We have a year to say,
Right.
we're behind
And
you.
we-
It's okay.
And we have to find out what the state standards board is going to,
Gosh.
all the things they're going to have to come up with to tell us what to do, basically. So at least we have
Yeah,
some.
exactly. I mean, the bill, the bill is huge. It's a 71-page bill. Now, half of it's been lined out because I think I talked to you about the process that was undertaken. This was flawed from the beginning. Each house undertook a task force to look at this issue and come back with recommendations. It should have been done as a joint General Assembly effort, because what you wound up with was two distinctly different approaches taken by the Senate and by the House. And I talked about the Senate package of 9 bills, and almost all of them bipartisan in nature. And then you go to the House, and
Right.
and the committee votes are party line, the floor votes are party line, and then these two things collide. And the sparks started. The Senate talked about getting rolled by the House. Why do we even have a Senate? It got pretty ugly. And it all could have been avoided, I think, or a lot of it could have been avoided if it would have been done in a more unified fashion. But the advocates, there are advocates out there. They're very disappointed in this, that it doesn't go far enough. They wanted complete civilian control of the process.
Unbelievable.
It went pretty far. A lot of aspersions cast around, a lot of talk about large defections of early retirements and difficulty in recruiting. So this a lot of talk about, and we didn't talk a lot about the policing and use of force, but the prescriptions on decision making in applying the use of force. You think about these situations police find themselves in, and are they going to go through this mental process of
Absolutely.
what do I have to do in this split second? It's really challenging. Really challenging.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what's going to happen. And that split second is going to be making a decision on whether they're going to pull out their weapon or take an action, because what if? And it will hollow out the force. I cannot believe that they didn't listen to the leaders that lead, again, in uniform. And it's just, it is a disgusting situation.
This is just wrong.
Well,
This
this
All the way
was,
through,
this was
just wrong.
strictly political.
Absolutely.
It was Democrats versus Republicans. I don't care how you want to
Yeah.
camouflage that. This is exactly what it was, with complete disregard to rural counties. Complete disregard. Whether you're Republican, Democrat, it didn't matter. It was
Right.
complete disregard for the way in which the rural counties are operated when it comes to law enforcement. And it forces us, as you said, Ed, to now become the Baltimore counties, and no
Right, it's
disrespect here,
ridiculous.
the Montgomery counties, the Prince George's counties of the world. And it takes away the ability for us to be able to do what we need to do to protect our citizens.
And look at
And
policemen
this
in the
is
face.
wrong
Right.
in every sense of the word.
Again,
And I'm
this,
curious as to what
Yeah.
kind of pushback can be given to combat this silly bill. I'm curious.
I've shared this before. If the paper is listening, this is what needs to be in the paper. Again, as you said, the absurdity, because now we have to look the sheriff in the face and his deputies and everyone that serves and say, we've got your back. And the reality is we don't, because of things like this. I apologize, Eric.
Thank you. If I may, I think that this legislation is ripe for a legal challenge in federal court. And I think that that is the avenue and salvation that law enforcement potentially has, that I'd advise members of law enforcement, the FOP, start talking to legal counsel and challenge this legislation in federal court, because I think that is the only way you'll be able to attack and dismantle the elements in this bill that are detrimental to our civilization, our community right now. So I highly advise everyone out there in the law enforcement community to start thinking about how they're going to legally challenge this in federal court. And I'm pretty much going to say that they'll be victorious in some form or fashion to reduce the negative impact of this bill.
Yeah,
We-
I don't know.
I hate to bring this up, but remember that you and Eric weren't here yet, Ed, but remember there were like 5 years ago, and Roberta, you probably remember this as well. We pushed back against the state on some kind of legislation. We were trying to get ourselves removed from that. I can't remember what it was. There was a certain commissioner here
Yeah.
who wanted to do that.
Solid waste.
I don't know what it was, but it didn't get very far,
No.
obviously, but it sent a message. But the problem was it sent the message down there that you are nuts. Do as we say and do as we do. That was what was said to us.
Right.
So, and the atmosphere right now in the federal court system, while I agree with you, Eric, that's probably the way to go. The atmosphere there for challenging something like this is probably not there either, based upon what we're seeing going on all around this country. So you're right. Technically, that's the avenue, but that avenue has a roadblock. So
You're right. It all depends too on which judges you pick up in the district court and then the federal court of appeals. And ultimately this could wind up in front of the United States Supreme Court and create some case law for the nation to follow.
yeah, you're right. It probably could. So, well, I don't know. I mean, we can sit here and say this
Yeah,
all day.
I'm not a lawyer. Don't
Yeah, I
say
know.
one on TV either. So just
But-
like I'm not a doctor, but
This
you know,
is
I think for us, I apologize, is just the messaging. And
Yeah.
Mike, what you shared is that we have a very clear message now that has passed. You know, we're in this situation, and
which is why I questioned
Yeah.
when I heard it. And
Yeah.
I rarely do I question the governor, but he was out there touting how this was
I
the
know.
best session ever. In whose eyes, Governor? Maybe fiscally,
and that's where he was
but when
focused.
you look at the big picture, in whose eyes was this the best session ever?
This was very difficult.
I'm looking at this from, Carroll County's 168,000 people.
Mhm.
you know, we have a police force here that is really on top of things.
Mhm.
We're going to be forcing them just to fill the paperwork out after the crime. Don't get involved or they're going to have you prosecuted for
Mhm.
doing whatever. And that's wrong. Just totally wrong the way this is being presented.
Incredibly disappointing and incredibly sad.
We had programs, you know, that were put in place that were short-sighted. And I'm talking about in the military, were short-sighted, and it made everybody look over their shoulder before they took action. And the last thing you want is anybody, again, in uniform, to have to think about what's going to happen if I do X. You're trained and designed to do X, and we should have the ability to do that.
And as you
Very
said, that
disappointing.
Split second.
Yep.
Is many
So-
times the difference.
And that's what I would like to see come out of this, at least. Okay, Mike, I appreciate that good news. Okay, do you really want to finish now?
Yeah. Well, what I'll say is, our delegation certainly did their best to push back on all of this, as the minority party did. It was interesting that I saw two moderate Democrats that have been in the legislature for some time, Senator Klausmeier and Senator Bidle, both expressed reservations on the floor about this going too far. But at the end of the day, they put up a green vote. And I think from a political perspective, that speaks to the power of the progressives in the legislature that can make it difficult for those moderate folks in 2 years, you know, in the next election to get primary. So, you know, one's in Baltimore County, one's in Anne Arundel County. So these are jurisdictions that are very much in favor of this. So you're right. This is driven by the large jurisdictions that have issues that are not present in Carroll County. And I think your concerns about a pullback in policing are founded, and we'll just have to see what happens. But they claim this is going to lead to a safer Maryland. So I think the only thing you can do at this point is hold them to that claim and see where it goes. So enough of that, I guess. Huh?
I will say that our city is an example of what police and a student society we don't want it here.
Keep going, Mike.
Yeah, let's finish out hopefully on a high note. So highway user revenues, we had a bill to try to remove the sunset from that and make it permanent. Didn't make it there, so it does sunset after 2024. So there's still time to come back and do that. I think they might have been looking out ahead that there's talk of infrastructure bill, which maybe is not as much infrastructure as we would normally think of infrastructure, but we'll see if any of that may find its way to roads. We talked a little bit about recycling and waste systems in Maryland. You know, the bill that Baltimore County proposed to include us in a regional task force did not move forward. Also, the task force that would look at this as a statewide task force also didn't go forward. There are actually two bills that would try to do this on a statewide process, and both of those failed. We talked about organics recycling, food recycling, and waste diversion. That bill did pass in essentially the same form I explained to you in the latest installment. It affects generators must be within 30 miles of a facility. That facility also has to be willing and able to enter into a contract. So I think the amounts of food is pretty large. We're talking about 2 tons for the initial phase, down to 1 ton after 23. But I think the fact that it's got to be a facility that has the capability and the willingness to enter into a contract probably is as good as we could hope for outside of outright failure. It looked like recyclable materials and resource recovery facilities. So this is a bill that removes incinerator ash from the definition of a recyclable material. And it would disallow the use of that in a county's calculation of recyclable materials. So this is, again, an effort to put pressure on closing down the Bresco facility in Baltimore City. That bill passed. Also a bill to get the state to develop a plan to identify and enhance markets for recyclable material. I think that's looked upon as a good thing, and that passed. In the cybersecurity arena, so we had a bill to develop guidance on cybersecurity strategies for counties, municipalities, school systems, and higher ed. They added a requirement to consult with the AG's office, I guess, to make sure that everything passes muster, since there's always a federal component to the internet. There is specific language in there that it's not a mandate that requires a county to take any particular action, but at least it'll develop sort of a consistent set of guidelines and best practices. Senator Hester's Senate bill was to create a cybersecurity coordination and operations office within MEMA, which is now the Department of Emergency Management. That would establish regional coordinators and try to enhance interjurisdictional cooperation between the state and counties and county to county. That did not move forward. The Office of
Mike,
Statewide Broadband.
I apologize, Mike. Why did that not move forward?
Why?
Yeah, I mean, what?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
To me, it's
I'll
just
take a look and see if
common
there's
sense.
anything in there that looks like a poison.
Yeah, I mean, it's common sense, you know. Cybersecurity does not have borders, and having the ability to have best practices and work with each other between jurisdictions. I mean,
Wait.
yeah, I
Did you
know.
use common sense in Annapolis?
It's unreal. I mean,
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
okay.
well, so there's, as I look at this, I'm thinking perhaps one challenge was that the bill was originally written for MEMA. MEMA has been changed now, so there's some bureaucratic changes that are occurring because of that change. And perhaps that was maybe a little bit too much to expect. Maybe that's something that comes back next year when the office is in place and up and operating. I don't know. Off the top of my head, that's the only thing I can think of offhand. But I'll dig into that and let you know.
Okay, thank you.
But this is a good one. So they're going to create an Office of Statewide Broadband within Housing Community Development. So, you know, right now you have the rural broadband. All the broadband effort is being consolidated in this office. So it establishes, you know, a director and a staff. They still have the goal of addressing rural and underserved areas. So I think that was the agreement, that you still have in some of the most populated jurisdictions, you still have areas that are underserved. So you've got rural parts of Montgomery County, actually, that have that problem. So by sort of creating a single office and bring it all together, much more coordinated, it consolidates all those funds that deal with broadband into that office. There was an agreement by the governor and the General Assembly to direct $300 million of the federal windfall to broadband. That is not in the budget. It's not in the bill. I assume that 300 will fund the grant process, and then the grant process will move forward as it currently does today. But they've got an obligation to identify gaps, to consolidate their resources, to collaborate with public and private entities. They're required to construct a map of the state that goes down to the individual households that still lack service. And they have a statewide goal to have 98% connectivity by the end of 2025 and 100% of the state connected by 2026. Sounds like an ambitious goal, but hopefully this consolidation of resources will make a much more organized effort to do that. And there was one other broadband bill, which was actually beefed up a little bit. So initially it was a joint trenching bill. So it would say that anytime the state was doing a road project that involved trenching, that they would invite the providers to occupy that joint trench. So that passed. They also added that the local governments can adopt policies to advance the progress of infrastructure, equipment, and systems needed to extend broadband to underserved areas. So I think they're giving you some leeway to try to address issues in your locality. So, believe it or not, that's pretty much it. So, on balance, I guess, it depends on your point of view. I think, and you talked about it, Commissioner Wance, that maybe it wasn't so great after all. The General Assembly certainly passed their priorities of police reform and COVID relief. They got a sports betting bill passed in the late hours. They expanded voting rights. We saw the federal dollar influx shore up the budget so that the structural deficit is corrected for the next 2 fiscal years. But the Democratic supermajority ensured that they would be able to override the governor's vetoes. And as you know, he vetoed the police package and the procurement bill. And they got those bills to him in time for him to veto and to give them time to override the veto. During the session, when they submit a passed bill to him, he has 5 days to act on it. So they were sure to get those bills to him and give them time. And they overrode them the next morning immediately after his vetoes. Actually, the process was somewhat successful in preventing some progressive overreach. I mean, I saw bills in there that were they were just egregious, and they didn't go anywhere. So I guess that we had to be thankful for. But I just want to thank you for the opportunity to serve you in Annapolis, even though it was virtual, and particularly want to thank your staff who are invaluable as the subject matter experts to give me their feedback on the bill so we can advocate properly to try to protect the interests of the county. So thank you for that. And I am very regretful that we had to do this on a computer screen. I really look forward, if I'm still around, to be able to interact with you in person. I think that's so much better, but we have to play the cards we're dealt, I guess.
It's okay that you're on a computer screen because I don't think you saw us throwing the popcorn at the screen. But let's
just a messenger, Commissioner. Just a messenger.
Let's go around. Any comments want to be made? Commissioner Boucher.
Well, Mr. Fowler, you have the personality for this that not a lot of people have. You deal with very contentious issues. You're very pleasant. You communicate and interact well. It's an honor to have you on our staff, and we sincerely appreciate everything you do for us. And we really much hope that you'll be with us next year, and we'll be able to personally shake your hand. So thank you very much, and go on vacation and enjoy yourself.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Frazier.
Mike, I just want to say thank you for the great job you're doing for Carroll County. I really appreciate the briefings that you're giving us because they're very, very thorough. And anytime we've asked a question, you come up with the answers in the next briefing. I do appreciate everything you're doing. Thank you.
Commissioner Weaver?
Yeah, Mike, thank you. You're what we need in Annapolis. And I mean, we didn't have this before when we first started. You've stepped in and you really give us that liaison with what's happening. Even though your information's a little disappointing today, I still appreciate the facts that we know exactly what's going on and what to expect. So thanks.
Commissioner Wance?
Never a good idea to shoot the messenger, right? Well, Mike, again, our relationship goes back many years, and I truly do appreciate what you bring to the table here. And what I also appreciate is the fact that you've talked me down off of that ledge several times. Not only this legislative season, but the other 6 that I've been involved in. And I truly do appreciate that, because you do bring that balanced perspective, if you will. And you're right. Maybe if you look at a whole, as the session as a whole, it probably was more positive than negative. But the problem is the negatives far outweigh the positives. So it's tough to get that balance, if you will. But as always, you did a fantastic job. And, we truly do appreciate it. And thank you.
So I think my first question is, why did you walk him off the ledge all the time? I mean, if you missed just one time, we could have been, no, I'm kidding. Really
We don't,
appreciate
sir, I think our brakes are the most important part of a vehicle, so apply them as necessary.
There you go.
I cannot imagine not having you as our liaison and having no liaison down there. The wealth of knowledge you definitely bring to the table helps us understand the environment that we're working in. And I know the delegation, it's been painful. So, I thank them, because everything that we're sharing this morning, I think, has been absolutely in line with what they were trying to accomplish as well. And they were working hard to make it very clear that these things should not be going forward. They're just outpowered. And the numbers, understanding Annapolis. But so I do appreciate their efforts as well that have been in line with what we're saying. This is a tough one. So, but, just again, thank you, not just being a messenger, but being an analyst, being someone that we can call on to be responsive as well for the information. That's important to all of us. So now, like Commissioner Boucher, it's time for you to take a vacation. So enjoy.
Thank you. I'll make sure to follow up on those couple issues we have hanging out there.
Oh, I thought you meant make sure you follow up on the vacation.
I'll do that too, I promise.
Okay, let's move on. Mr. Lyburn, apologize not getting to you before this piece, but talk to us about the restaurant relief program. I think you just need an authorization.
Morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
But what I want to do is give you a fast update on where the other 3 are. The motel, it was $278,000. It's been out now for about 2 weeks. And believe it or not, we only have 2 hotels out of 10. And that's a $25,000 grant apiece. So we're emailing them, and we're going to be calling them. We're physically going to go visit them, because we want to make sure, we distribute all the $250,000 to them. It's a pretty easy grant. It's not a difficult grant. The online sales telemarketing grant was for $1,000, if you remember, and it was $13,958. We have received 10 applications, the good ones. So we're at $10,000, so we're close, and we're going to be calling some of the small companies. If you know any small companies that have bought computers or computer-related materials, please let us know. The nonprofits, the $557,000, we've only received 9 applications. And remember, under 10 employees was $10,000, and over 10 was $15,000. that we're going to be out contacting everyone. We're going to be, doing our partners again, the chambers, and going out there and trying to get them. The new one, which we want to release next week, is the restaurant grant. That's $612,281. This is a little bit different grant because you can use it. These are eligible expenses. You can use it for payroll, mortgage, rent, utilities, information technology, marketing, employee training, commercial cleaning, professional service, vehicle equipment expense. So this is wide open on this. Remember, we had 149 restaurants that applied for the other two grants, the restaurant grants. We'd like to use the same criteria. Under 9 employees would be $4,000. Over 10 employees would be $8,000. And in the food trucks, just a straight $3,000. It doesn't matter how many employees. So it'd be the key to it is under 9, 4,000, over 10, 8,000, and the food trucks would be 3,000. So I'm asking, I guess, for your approval or comments on the restaurants. Comments?
I think it's a good idea. I think
it sounds good.
we may have to revisit if that money is not expended, but at least it's a start.
Yeah.
4, 8, and 3.
With that price tag associated with that program, Jack, do you anticipate that money would be used, and or would you suggest a little bit more so that all the money goes out? I just don't want any money sitting around. That's all.
Exactly.
We had 100 I guess applications the last 2 grants for people under 9 employees. We took that number down to 80. We had 49 restaurants over 8,000, over 10 employees. We took that number down to 40. And we did not have food trucks in the other one, so that's 3,000. I feel really good on the restaurants that we're gonna, expend all that money to 612. The nonprofits and I think is going to be the problem. There's so much grants out there for nonprofits right now, and they have received a lot of grants. But to answer your question, I feel good about the restaurants. You won't have to go back out.
Okay,
I think so too.
I'm good with that.
So with that, let's just make this formal as far as the restaurant grant program. Do we need a motion for this or just direction going forward? If I can get a motion for the 4,000, 8,000, and 3,000 splits as Jack described.
Is that your motion?
That's my motion.
Second.
I got a motion second on the floor. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
One
Thank you.
question about the nonprofits.
Yeah, go ahead, because I was going to add.
I talked to you before, Jack, and your department about these nonprofits again. Are the parameters the same on these nonprofit grants? Because we have quite a few in the county that don't have any employees, but yet we're unable to have any type of revenue coming in as a result of COVID. So is that still the case? Because I sure would like to see some of these nonprofits that don't have employees that couldn't raise money get a piece of this pie.
It is the same. The answer to your question, it's the same as before. I don't think we're going to be able to expend this whole 557. And I think after that, I think we need to go back and revisit and see if we can change some of the criteria on that.
Well, yeah, I guess that would be the question. Can we locally change our criteria to help some of these? Because it's I think it's very unfair.
I can tell you the motel hotel, because remember it was $278,000 and we are only going to spend $250. We tried to change that criteria, and it was by the legislature. we could not change that. We have not gone back to the nonprofits and asked them about that yet, but the criteria is there. We haven't been able to change any, you know, per Debbie, we haven't been able to change any of the criteria. So I don't know if we can, but you know, if we still have a lot of money left over, we're gonna try.
Yeah, let's dig a little deeper because those nonprofits are hurting big time.
I definitely believe, and I absolutely agree. I believe it's worthwhile asking the question and making, not just asking a question, making a request to allow us to change criteria appropriately to fit Carroll County's nonprofits. And the other is the American Legions. They're part of the nonprofits. Are they eligible for these nonprofit grants?
Yeah, yes, those 11 American Legions and the VFWs, they're all okay. And we call them personally and make sure we get all 11 of them in there. And we've done that for the last 3 grants. Yes,
Okay.
they're all covered.
Okay, because I definitely would like to see them continue to get that coverage and take opportunities in getting that money because they're hurting.
We will email and call Amy Sipes and see if we can, you know, talk about the nonprofit criteria.
Okay.
Good.
And just the last thing about the American Legions is taking advantage of the Veterans Advisory Council and Gina Valentine, you know, having oversight on that, you know, using Mark Fisher and the council itself to reach out to the Legions and VFW. You know, in other words, don't do it all on your own. They have those relationships already built. So, okay.
How about the fire companies while we're on the American
I don't know.
Legions? That a lot of some of the fire companies have started back up with some fundraising activities. But are they in that mix too, Jack, again, or what?
If they serve food and have a commercial kitchen, yes.
Okay. All right.
For the restaurant. Yeah, for the restaurants, if they have a commercial kitchen and they serve food, you know, they can get it. And they did get it. Yes. They're
Okay.
covered.
All right. Okay.
So let's just keep following up on those because, yeah, okay.
All right.
Okay.
Yep. We will make sure all the fire departments and the VFWs and the, you know, American Legions do get in.
Okay.
Okay.
Any further discussion on this? Really appreciate you and the team's work in making this happen.
Yeah, we have 4. Now we have 4. You know, we have 4 of them out there, but we have it down. We got a good system here.
You absolutely do. And you got a great team. Now get back to work.
Yep. Commissioners, we will. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Let's get Chris Hine on and request approval for grant application and acceptance of an award dealing with Little Pipe Creek restoration opportunities. I see Chris and I see Ms. Janet. Okay.
Yes. Good morning, Commissioners. So we have an opportunity here to obtain some assistance with our NPDS program, technical assistance and also some resources. So I'm going to ask Janet to explain the grant and then we'll answer any questions that you have.
All right, good morning, Commissioners. As Chris mentioned, we have an opportunity to partner with the Center for Watershed Protection and submit a proposal to the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation for their planning and technical assistance grant. So we are here this morning to request your approval to submit the grant application and acceptance of award. This opportunity will allow the Bureau to partner with the Center for Watershed Assessment. What we're looking to do is aggregate existing data that we have for the Little Pipe Creek watershed, go out in the field, fill in gaps, and look at possible restoration opportunities for future projects in that watershed. Ultimately, coming up with a matrix that we can replicate in other watersheds throughout the county to determine how we proceed with restoration projects for our NPDS program. There are no matching funds required for this grant, and we are requesting $49,998 from NIFWIF. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about this opportunity.
So you didn't want to be greedy and ask for $49,999, knowing the max was 50,000, but, okay, any, questions? Great opportunity. Any, questions or discussion?
Well,
I'd
this
just
grant
like
is-
to. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Eric.
All right, thank you. I'd just like to state, since this covers the watershed of both my district and Commissioner Lance's, we're all in favor of this. And if there's any chance I can go along with any one of yous or staff to visit these assessments, I love this stuff. I put on my hunting boots, go out there and get in the mud. I'd love the opportunity. And I move that the Board of Commissioners approve the submittal of the grant application and acceptance of the award to National Fish and Wildlife Foundation.
Second.
Okay, I got a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yeah, this grant is just for the, an assessment of Little Pike Creek watershed. Is that correct? Or it's not, I mean, not that
That
that's
is-
not valuable, but that's what it's for right now. So if we
That is-
identify some problems with that, which I'm sure that we will, when is the fixing part going to happen?
So you are correct, Commissioner Frazier. This is to help us identify and prioritize projects that will ultimately be included in our CIP plan for future restoration. The information that comes out could potentially lead to other grant opportunities through the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. They do provide opportunities for construction funding. So I would say, it could lead to restoration opportunities several years down the road.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further discussion or questions? Hearing, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, 5-0. Thank you very
you.
much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Now I think we're going to have Keith Vogel and Miss Maureen Dunn, a bid approval for 6 new police vehicles for the Carroll County Sheriff's Office. And Maureen, congratulations on being our new procurement officer. So thank you for all that you're doing. I apologize.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Go for it.
Okay, we are asking your approval to purchase 6 new police vehicles from, and I'm sure I'm not pronouncing this right, but Hedridge Fleet Services in the total amount of $201,942. These vehicles will be purchased from the State of Maryland contract, which was competitively bid. And this purchase includes 6 replacement vehicles for the current fleet. This amount is in the adopted budget, so no other funds will be necessary. And I'll turn it over to Keith for questions about the vehicles.
Morning, Commissioners. This is going to replace 4 marked vehicles for the Sheriff's Department and 2 vehicles for the detention center. These are all replacement vehicles, and the vehicles that are replaced will be sold at public auction.
Mr. Vogel, when these vehicles come in, do you have to do any retrofitting for air staff?
We actually will be back to you later on for equipment and installation for these vehicles. We do the detention center vehicles here in-house, but for the marked sheriff's vehicles, we send them out to a contractor.
Great, thank you. Can you do me a favor, when they do come in for retrofitting, I'd like to come out and see what type of retrofitting is done on them, just go over the process with me.
And we can take you down to the installer if you'd like to see where they're done and everything they do.
Yeah, that'll give me a better understanding of what we're spending the money on to retrofit these vehicles. So thank you.
I'll make the motion. We award the contract for 6 police vehicles to Hertridge Fleet Services in the amount of $201,942.
Second.
Okay, I got a motion in a couple seconds. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing, seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's move on to a bid approval, request for Carroll County asphalt paving at Freedom Park. And I believe I got Mr. Daggett and Maureen still on. Okay,
Yes.
go for it.
Okay. Again, we solicited bids from qualified contractors to provide all the labor, the equipment and materials to provide asphalt paving at Freedom Park. The bids were received from the following contractors, which you can see on your executive summary. And we are asking approval to award this bid to Image Asphalt Maintenance Incorporated out of Pasadena, Maryland for $58,759. And for the project explanation, I'll turn it over to Jeff.
Good morning, Commissioners. This is a park restoration project. We resurfaced the front third of the trail at Freedom Park previous year. This will complete the resurfacing of that trail. We'll do the last 2/3. It's in the rear of the park. The trail was originally installed approximately 15 years ago, and we do have sufficient funding within the park restoration budget to complete this work. So we recognize it's quite a range of bids that came in. We were very happy with the low bid, and we have talked with references for the low bid, and they were very pleased with their work. They've done some work up in Preston County. So our recommendation would be to award to low bid Image Asphalt Maintenance. And be happy to answer any questions you may have.
One question, Jeff, is where does this lie on your priority list of, restoration for the parks within the county?
This is a very heavily used trail. As I mentioned, the front third was done before. We try to get these resurfaced before they start to deteriorate, and then it does become a more expensive proposition at that point. So walking trails are the most requested amenity we have in our parks. We want to keep them in good shape because we know they're used heavily. So this is one of the highest priorities out of our park restoration funding.
Okay.
You could bike on this trail too if you wanted to, couldn't you?
You can, they're a little narrow for that, so it really depends on how much usage is occurring at the time, but there's no prohibition of bikes.
It's more walking and running, to be honest, on that trail.
You just want to run the hikers off the trail, don't you?
That's right. Well, you got that little bell.
I'd like getting ahead of everybody.
He's got a little bell on his on his handlebars, he said, so.
I move the Board of Commissioners award the contract asphalt paving to Freedom Park to Image Asphalt Maintenance Incorporated in the amount of $15,759.02.
Second.
Okay, got a motion second. Any further discussion on this? Hearing seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Okay, let's move on. And I think you're both still up dealing with Crimgold Park, looking for a bid approval on the Carroll County's Crimgold Park Phase 2 construction.
Yes, and again, Commissioners, we are seeking your approval to award this work to MT Laney Company for the paving and a pavilion at Crimgold Park in the amount of $180,058. This cost is within the project budget. No additional funds should be needed. And again, for the project information, I'll turn it over to Jeff.
Thank you, Maureen. Crimgold Park was opened in 2015. It was a very lengthy construction process, and there were a lot of delays due to deferred or cut program open space funds. So when the park was opened, we were not able to pave the parking spaces in the road, as well as the rear loop that services a pavilion in the back of the park. So what we are doing with this Phase 2 construction, this will pave all of the parking spaces and the back loop, which services an existing pavilion. We will also be adding one new pavilion, a 16 by 16 pavilion that overlooks the ponds in the rear of the park. So basically, this is completing what we would have liked to have done with the initial construction had those program open space funds not been deferred.
President Rothstein, I want to state, as much as I love the park and I'm all for this, I do business with MT Laney, so I'm going to have to abstain from any voting.
Okay. Any discussion?
What's the pavilion part of it again? Is that the surface of the flooring of the pavilion? Is that what you're doing?
This is actually the flooring, and the pavilion will be constructed in the rear of the park. It'll be a new pavilion that's added there. It'll be very close to the swing sets and some play equipment in the back of the park. It's a very popular location overlooking the ponds, very scenic location.
Okay.
So we're doing all this work at the same time.
Okay,
Okay,
all right. I'll move that we award the contract for phase 2 at Crim Gold to MT Laney and $180,058.
Second.
okay, I got a motion, I got a second. Any further discussion? Hearing seen none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, 4 with 1 abstention. Thank you very much. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
You,
Okay, Maureen, I think you're still up because we're looking for a bid approval on energy management control services over at Department of Public Works. And I do see Justin. Go for it.
okay. We are asking your approval to award the contract for energy management control services, which includes the installation, maintenance, and repairs to Johnson Controls Incorporated. And this is going to be a piggyback contract, and we will be piggybacking off of Howard County Public Schools contract, which was competitively bid. And we would like to award this project to Johnson Controls. And I'm going to turn it over to Justin to explain exactly what Johnson Controls will be doing.
Morning, Commissioners. This is a renewal contract for Johnson Controls, which started back in 2006. Johnson Controls will be making repairs, installation, and performance maintenance on all the HVAC equipment throughout the county buildings as a part of an overall energy management contract, which runs through 2024. This contract allows the county to improve strategies and reduce energy and usage and increase efficiencies, resulting in savings, and then use those savings to perform other projects down the road. What questions may we have?
Okay, we may have. Okay, are there any questions?
Now, is there any other companies out there that do this besides Johnson Controls? I mean, every time, every bid that we ever get, and I know it was competitively bid. Well, it was kind of piggybacked off of Howard County, but they did it. And every now and then I'll hear stories, and maybe it's changed, that you can't do anything unless you call Johnson Controls. You can't put the heat up, you can't put the heat down, you can't readjust the temperature. It's all based on what they tell you you can do. Is that still true, or what? Where are we with that?
Yeah, Commissioners, we're in a performance energy savings contract with Johnson Controls. We're currently in phase 3. Phase 3, we're in year 5 of 15. So what that's saying is Johnson Controls meet with us quarterly. We do energy studies on all the buildings, and we have a contract set up with them that we have parameters throughout the buildings as far as temperature, occupancy schedules, so we can cut things on, cut things off. And that's where the energy is showing, where we're saving energy. And when we're saving energy, then we can produce more projects to help the county save money in the energy side of things. As far as changing temperatures, yes, we can do that all in-house. Johnson Controls is the company who has our BAS system, building automation system. We currently have in 30 different county buildings where we can remotely log into the building, turn air conditioners on, turn them off, set schedules. So we can really fine tune, these buildings to help save on energy.
Okay.
They have fun inside.
Oh yeah, it's just more to it than I get it. It's more to it than walking up to the thermostat and pushing it back or forward, whatever. So that's fine. Yep. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Not a problem.
All right. I'll make the motion that we award these services to Johnson Controls to provide the energy management control services.
Second.
Okay,
I wasn't going
guys,
to do that until Justin explained. I wasn't going to make them.
I'm sure glad we have Justin on the screen. I got a motion in a couple of seconds. Any further discussion? Seeing here none. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Good.
Thank you.
5-0.
Thank you,
Okay.
Commissioners.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about request approval of the Maryland Relief Act, appropriate funds to our local workforce boards. So to our Burke. I see Debbie, Denise, okay, and Heather. Okay, we got you all. Denise, you want to start it? Or Debbie?
Check your gear wheel.
Seriously?
Yeah, we haven't heard that for a while.
Who is starting this? I'm lost.
I have volume. All right.
I don't have volume. Okay. Do I have volume now?
We got it.
You do.
You got it.
Yes. Okay, good. Good morning, Commissioners. I wanted to introduce the Maryland Relief Act Grant Award that is coming into the workforce areas through the Department of Labor. And they have some monies that have been allocated. Carroll's allocation is going to be $218,987. There is no county match that's required. This is funding that's coming as part of the Maryland Relief Act. And they're going to be available coming up next week and must be appropriated by June 30th. So Heather and the crew have been working on a budget as to how to most effectively spend these monies, and they must be spent by the end of June in 2022. So I'll turn it over to Heather, and she can talk to you about how we're going to utilize these funds to benefit Carroll citizens.
Thanks, Denise. Can everybody hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, good. All right, excellent. So this is quite an opportunity for local workforce areas in the state. Typically, when money becomes available, it goes to the Maryland Department of Labor, and they appropriate the funds using the formula of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act guidelines, which are very prescriptive. And this is something different they're doing, and we're very excited about it. They have put forth very open-ended parameters on this grant. We're just supposed to meet those most in need, and what works for our local workforce areas is basically what they've said to do. So it allows us to think locally what would best serve the citizens and residents of the county. So coming together and putting this, our heads together and figuring out how we want to spend this money, we've come up with kind of 5 key areas. The first one is we want to hire a 1-year part-time contractual position, somebody that will provide not only direct service to customers, but will also help us deliver services under this grant and keep it organized. We want to expand our outreach into local communities that may be underserved, have citizens that have barriers to employment. So we want to reach everybody throughout the community. And so we'll do that through very strategic campaign. And next we would look at the decreasing the digital divide in the county. I think the pandemic has taught us that technology is very much present in our lives and is not going to change. We have citizens that come in to utilize our services at the resource center who don't have basic computer skills, can't do an online job application, and kind of are fearful of technology because they don't use it on a daily basis in their lives. And this grant gives us an opportunity to use annual online subscriptions to basically serve anybody that wants to increase their digital literacy, whether it's for career or in their personal lives to help them. And we can also do Microsoft certifications for people. And what's excellent about this, they don't have to have eligibility. We want to open this up to Carroll residents. So we're excited about the opportunity for that. We are looking at also customers that want to go into training. A lot of training is online right now. So we want to provide either technology or connectivity, internet connectivity for them to manage to complete their training. And speaking of training, another thing we're looking at is sometimes people with barriers have trouble getting to where they need to be and completing tasks. And we don't want to create any more barriers by saying you have to get to the American Job Center to get started. So we want to be present in the community. So we're creating mobile units that we can reach the citizens where they are in their communities. And we're also looking at being able to offer them incentives to complete paid work experiences or apprenticeships or even complete trainings. We believe in people being able to succeed, and we just want to give them every opportunity to make that happen. So there's a lot of different components to this that we've put together, we've pieced together, and I don't want to take up more of your time, but if you have specific questions, I'd be glad to answer some of them.
Well, Ms. Powell, I like the fact that in here is the youth component and the ex-offenders. You know, some people might not agree with the expense, but long-term, this reduces the liability for us to help salvage those people's lives so they can be productive in society. So this is a great program, and I appreciate your presentation.
Thank you.
Heather, a couple things. One is, I do appreciate that the state is giving us the money via a formula, because we would expect that, but not being over prescriptive and allowing us and treating us like adults as we are on how to use that money. And no better folks than you on understanding how to use it. You know, I serve on the governor's workforce development board, and so I knew this was happening, and how it was being pushed out. The only, I don't want to say concern, I just want you to think through, is that part-time position, and are we taking enough advantage of resources at the community college? We are funding an individual there specifically for small business and small business development. I do not know if he is overtaxed. I do not know if the Miller Center over there is overtaxed, but this may be an opportunity to partner with the Miller Center and the community college on workforce development and look into this holistically. It is only a $200,000 grant, but you know, there's a bigger story to tell beyond that 200,000, and we want to be able to, you know, develop that. So this may be a catalyst to develop a stronger relation with the Miller Center and the community college. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I do. I'd like to talk to that a little bit. We do work with the representative in the small business sector. He provides, it's the individual's changed right now. It's Darren Payton. So he comes to the virtually right now to the American Job Center on a monthly basis to teach a Ready, Set, Go class for people who are interested in entrepreneurial businesses. And so we also refer people to them when they come in and say, I'm interested in developing my own business or starting my own business. So we do have a working relationship and very close with adult education as well as continuing education at the community college. If I can speak to using this part-time position a little more clearly, this person will be hands-on also. One of the ways we're working outside of the WIOA grant is we can provide paid work experiences, but what we can't do is have somebody on the job sometimes with some of the youth. And I think some youth need more support on a daily basis than we're able to offer. And this person would be a mentor to them on the job and a liaison between the employer and the youth. And we're really excited about that opportunity. So I do think this position is pretty important. We've looked at it a couple different ways, and I think it will add to the grant.
Okay. And, you know, just as I shared, the state treating us like adults, we need to treat you like adults, and you're going through the decision-making process and figured out how to best allocate the funds. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. And I should say that we do use the community college when training opportunities come up locally with businesses. Sure. We work in concert with them to try to come up with training curriculum if that's something we can do through our grant. So we work very closely.
Yeah,
but I think your point is very valid. So thank you.
No, I appreciate it. This is a good news story, especially my point being very valid. Right there, Commissioner Frazier.
Okay. The Board of Commissioners approve the submission of the Maryland Relief Act grant, accept the award, and approve the addition of one PT contractual position.
Second.
And thank you for what you do at Burke.
Thank you.
Okay, I got a motion second. Any further conversation, discussion, questions? Go ahead, Commissioner Boucher.
quickly state, I think that mentoring program is extremely critical because I think that is the one component that's missing in a lot of juveniles' lives is that mentor could salvage their life and send them off in the right direction. So thank you very much for having that out there for us.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good. I vote thank you, ladies.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Okay, next, we're going to have a 30 to 40-minute discussion on the results of the fiber broadband study that was provided by CC Cable Regulatory Commission. So I think Carol Schrover and Mark Ripper should be coming on. I see Mark.
The results of the fiber broadband study.
Turn your speakers down there, Mark.
CC Cable Regulatory Commission, so I think Carol.
I don't like saying it once, hearing it twice is really bad.
Could I
Because
comment on?
IT people don't know how to work
Could I
it.
comment on that? I hate it.
Okay. I'll refrain then.
Morning, Commissioners. Carol might be a couple of minutes. She's on a phone call with Comcast. Oh, here she comes now. All right, so good morning. So the reason that I am before you today is I want to provide you with a high-level overview of possible broadband expansion programs that we have available or may have available in Carroll County as we move forward. Just to remind you on what we're currently doing, the current program that we have is a Carroll County grant program. We provide up to 50% matching reimbursement of qualified project expenses with a cap of around $25,000 per approved project. We have a cap currently of $100,000 per entity or service provider in any given fiscal period, and that it does cover the construction, acquisition, leasing, towers, buildings, whatever they need to get the infrastructure in place. We have currently used this program approximately 15 times. Quantum Internet Service has used it many of those times, and in-home businesses have also used it about a half a dozen times to have Comcast service brought to their house, where we help them match the grant. And that is currently the only thing that we are doing directly here in Carroll County. New opportunities that are coming up, I'll first review each one of these, and then I'm going to go over this in quite some detail. In March of 2020, the Board of Commissioners accepted grant funds from the state of Maryland to have a broadband study undertaken. A draft of this study was just received on April 9th. An initial review of the study was completed with telecommunications on April 13th. And what I want you to know here is that the reason, and I've got that little note there about the FCC's Rural Digital Opportunity Fund. Once this study began, and the reason it took a while to get to this point is that the FCC does not on a regular basis do RDOF funding. It is something that once they decide they have enough money and they want to move forward with, they did. And in the middle of this study, they did decide to move forward with an RDOF opportunity. And I'll be talking in more detail about that in just a couple of minutes. In January of 2021, county government submitted 3 grant applications, as you're aware, to the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development, 2 on behalf of Comcast and 1 on behalf of Quantum Internet Services, and they are still currently pending. We do not have the results on whether or not any of those grants will be awarded to us. The last thing that's really good news, but came in at the very last minute, is that in March, the federal government created the American Rescue Plan. And we tentatively have allocated $32 million to Carroll County with the uses listed as broadband, water, and sewer. In my conversations with the grants office yesterday, we still do not have any detailed requirements at this point, other than we will have through December 31st of 2024 to use the funds. So in other words, at this point, we don't even know how to apply for the funds, and let alone use them. And we do not have the requirements of how those funds will have to be used and what we're going to do as we move forward. So what I want to do here is I want to talk in a little bit more detail about the broadband feasibility study that was done. The study stated that most residents of Carroll County do have an access to a mix of internet services, but many locations do not have robust broadband services. Comcast delivers service to most, but not all areas of the county. The report analyzes fixed broadband, meaning landline, following both federal and state definitions. Evidence from other jurisdictions similar to Carroll County, including other Maryland counties, suggests that fixed wireless solutions, especially in the unlicensed spectrum, struggle to reach broadband speeds, especially where line of sight is obscured and by sloping hills or foliage. So in other words, what they're basically telling us, and we kind of knew this already, is that wireless technology in Carroll County is very difficult and very complicated to complete and build and hit large numbers of people for two main reasons. One is our elevation changes, and the other is the amount of trees and all that are around homes out in the areas, less populated areas. Because of the challenging economic broadband deployment in rural areas, private ISPs likely will not invest in broadband infrastructure in currently unserved parts of the county, absent some sort of financial support. State and federal programs may be present to the county and its potential partner opportunities to fill some broadband gaps. And we have two categories of people. We have category one, which are relatively large contiguous areas, and category two, which comprises pockets of unserved premises located on isolated or low density roads that fall within areas that are otherwise unserved. And what I'd like to do here is I would like to bring up my screen. Just a second here. All right, and screen. Okay, can you see that, commissioners?
Yep, we're good.
Oh, wrong one. Get it back up here again. Okay. What we have here, this is category one, commissioners. This is the relatively large contiguous areas. Columbia Telecommunications is able to determine that there are 4 unserved high-density areas in Carroll County. There are about 960 premises in these 4 areas, and as you can see, they are located in the western part of the county, 2 of them further north and 2 of them central. It is estimated that it would cost us between $7 to $10 million to build out to these facilities, where the county would actually build and own the network. Get this to go down to the next page. And what you see here in this map is the proposed construction of the network. You can see where we currently have existing fiber running out into the Tawnytown area. And what we would do from there is we could construct 2 middle mile backbones that would take us to those 4 areas. And then those orange dots are proposed cabinets. And all a cabinet is a place for us to do splicing and extending the network without actually having to use every single pair of fiber that's built. In this $7 to $10 million build, we would be looking at building aerial, which is something that's very realistic and a lot less expensive when you're out in the rural areas, because the poles are generally clean, as opposed to when you try and do that in the middle of a municipality or in other locations. So it would be fairly straightforward. And we think that if we get the funding, and depending on how we spend the funding, we do think that this is something that we could complete very easily by that December 31st, 2024 date. Now, I want you to know that we do not have to be the ones that build this. And I'll get into that in a little bit more as well, but that is one possibility. And if we were to do it, it would be just like we do now. We would build the fiber network, and then we would lease the fiber out to one of the service providers for them to actually come in and provide service to those residents in those particular areas. I also want you to know that as part of this, that the, how do I go? Does anybody have any questions on those maps? Because I'll take them down if there isn't any.
Now leave them up for a minute.
Okay.
I'd just like to state that Commissioner Wentz will probably agree with me as well, that these are also some of the lowest household income precincts within the county. They're also the people that have the gravel roads, so they really appreciate the love of this happening for them.
I wanted to see that map again because I don't agree with the map. You're saying that those red areas and the dots are what again, Mark? Because unserved, if they're unserved areas, that's not all the unserved areas we have. You could run that all the way across the northern tier of the county. Where is that?
You're correct, Commissioner. And I have other maps that when we have more time and we can go into this in more detail, I can present other maps where those other unserved areas are. The problem is, Commissioner, those other unserved areas, this is category 1. This is relatively large contiguous areas, which makes it very cost effective for us to be able to build a fiber network and hit people. I think the cost was somewhere in the $5,000 to $6,000 per premise here. The other areas do not have the density that would allow that. Yes, Commissioner.
Are the 960 homes that you said, are those 960 homes in those 3 contiguous areas?
The 4 areas there, there's a little tiny one at the bottom.
Okay, in those 4 areas, is it 900?
Yes, they are.
What is the total homes that are not being currently served, regardless of where they are?
Okay, that is a number that I will have to get for you. I'll make myself.
Okay, so, no, I appreciate it. I don't mean to be cutting you off. I just want to kind of cut to the chase on a couple things. $7 to $10 million to support those 960 homes in those 4 contiguous areas. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, Commissioner.
So we know we're going to be getting $32 million. And it would be a prudent measure for somebody to develop the plan to using the $7 to $10 million of that $32 million to, answer this, problem set. This has got to be, to me, the highest priority that we have in using that $32 million. I understand we don't know how it's going to be allocated, but regardless, we know it's coming. And so that would be one. Then the second is whatever the number is above and beyond that, what is the cost associated with, again, connecting those homes and potentially then using, in our decision of the 5 of us, using the rest of that money, which would be $22 million. And we still have a lot left over. That's what this comes down to, is we have money coming our way. We have enough money sufficient to provide a solution. Do we have a solution in place, or are we prepared to have a solution in place so when that money is executed, we can say go? And then the last piece of this is, how long will it take for those homes to then get connected?
Okay, in answer to your question, Commissioner, we are prepared to move forward once we know what our funding requirements are. Just off the top of my head, I would guess it would be 6 to 9 months to complete that build once we actually have the funding in place. I have already had Skyline Network Engineering looking at this and starting to work on a proposal to do it. However, Commissioner, I want to make this point very, very clear here, is that while we can, and if that's the direction you want us to take, we would spend that $7 to $10 million to build that. I want to talk about other opportunities that we might have to turn that, and I don't know that I'm going to get it all. Like I said, they listed broadband, water, sewer, but let's say that I get $22 million of it. We want to look at this, and we can do this very quickly. It'll be a very quick turnaround, as quick as we possibly can. If I'm getting $22 million from the federal government, rather than me just going and saying, okay, I'm going to spend the $22 million, let's go. I also have been presented to me in this report an overview of 12 different state and federal funding opportunities that we may have the possibility of working on where we can apply for grants. Now, again, the timing of those grants and all of that is still yet to be determined, but I might be able to turn that $22 million into $44 million. So we want to do this in a way that, yes, we get it done as quickly as we possibly can, but we also want to take the funding that we're going to have available to us and extend it out as far as we possibly can. Because the more money I got, the more I can build.
Hey, Mark, you had a map there. You went into Baltimore County with the fiber for about 10 miles or whatever, over by Elysia area. Yeah, why is that out there as such?
That's an excellent question, Commissioner. When we built our initial fiber network here in Carroll County, we needed to complete the ring. So in order to do that, we went down into Baltimore County and came back around up into Carroll. It is our fiber. We own it, free and clear. We have no agreements with Baltimore County or anything. They weren't even looking at fiber builds when we did this. So that's why it's down in Baltimore County. It was just to help us complete the ring in a fashion that made it work for our network.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions about the maps? Okay. So again, Columbia Telecommunications did provide us with a detailed overview of 12 different state and federal opportunities. And we have already been working with the grants office to determine which ones we would qualify for and how we would move forward with applying for those grants that we are eligible. The primary recommendations of the study were, again, to continue to encourage Comcast to pursue state funds for expanding in unserved areas. And Commissioner Rothstein, this is one of those areas where, again, that money could be used. One of the problems for Comcast is that with our current contract, there has to be 20 homes per mile for them to build in any particular area. And as I know Commissioner Lance is aware, there are actually roads out there where there's fiber on one side of the road, Comcast fiber on the other side of the road, and the road itself in between hasn't been built because it doesn't meet the density requirements. So with some of this funding, we could work with Comcast and the state government, getting additional funding from them with possibly some contribution from Comcast, where we could complete a lot of those types of builds over the next several years. And Comcast would then make it worthwhile for them to be able to build. If they don't have to fund it 100% to complete that road, they might be able to do it with 10 homes per mile or 15 homes per mile, whatever's there on the schedule. And Carroll has a very detailed list of those areas where that's been requested. It's the same list that we used when we applied for the state grants. So that's another possible way for us to be spending this money in working with Comcast. Comcast, because they are so big and because they do cover so much of the county, makes the most sense to use in a lot of these areas, because it would be very expensive for us to build out in the areas so that other service providers could get there when Comcast already has the infrastructure in place and out, and they just need to build that middle last mile in order to provide service to the residents of Carroll County. We're also going to seek to collaborate with our other partners that we have here in Carroll County and continue to move forward with them and helping them expand their networks. They are mainly located in a lot of cases around the incorporated towns and are starting to spread out from there. And we can help those companies continue to expand their network out from the incorporated towns. We can also put out an RFP to do this. And again, this is another option. We can build and own the network. We're good at doing that. We've been doing it for years. It works. But we also have the ability to put out an RFP that would, again, seek state and federal funding for the contiguous unserved areas where maybe we are not the owner of the network. Maybe there's a company that if there was funding available, they would be willing to come in, build the network, own the network, operate the network, and provide the service to the citizens of Carroll County. The advantage to us, you looking at that particular model, is that we do not have the ongoing cost of the pole rentals, if poles need to be replaced, if there are any problems with the fiber out there, we don't have to replace it in 50 years, whatever the case might be. So there is no ongoing cost to us if somebody decides to build those areas and provide the service to the users. And that's basically what we can look at. Again, fixed wireless providers, we're not rolling them out. There may be some areas where wireless shots may work well in certain parts of the county, but they are definitely not the solution for Carroll County to really solve this problem in the bigger, longer term picture. And the final recommendation was that, similar to what we already have, was to consider creating a broadband partnership fund where, like the state and federal government, we offer larger grants than what we currently do for service providers to come in and build to provide service to the residents of Carroll County. So those are the primary recommendations that we've gotten. Are there any questions on any of those?
Mark, what is your recommendation? Let's just say, just to cover those 4 contiguous areas, those 960 homes. What is your recommendation for us moving forward?
If our goal is to get it done as quickly as possible, it would be for Carroll County government to actually do the build.
What do you believe?
Go
ahead. I'm sorry.
We have the resources to be able to do that, to engineer it, to build it, and to get it completed. We've done it with 130 plus miles of fiber already. This build would not be anything that we have not been able to do before. If our goal is to see if we can stretch the funding that we're getting out, then I would say that we would want to take the time to look at doing possibly an RFP to see if somebody wants to come in and partner with us and to take a look at using this money as a match. We might be able to do the entire build for $4 million in county fund and get a match from the state and federal government for $6 million. So we've got money that we can now use to build someplace else in Carroll County. So whichever one of the, you have to weigh those goals on what you want to accomplish with this.
Right. So that's more managing the resources, the money piece of this. But my understanding is, that we have a vision and a goal to ensure that all Carroll Countyans have access. And we've seen the challenges over this past year, both for kids, for adults, for everybody that do not have access. And to me, it's just a very scary situation. So to me, that's the goal, is for everyone to have access. I understand resources, but so with that being the goal, and I'm just speaking for myself,
Sure.
But for that being the goal, what would you believe the best course of action is?
I think that if our goal is to reach as many residents as we can, I think our goal is that we need to conserve the resources as best we can. I mean, those four areas are going to get service. And whether they get it because the county built it or because there was a partnership, built all of it, paid for all of it, or there was a partnership and we got state and federal funding, they're still going to get service. Having those resources, that gives us then the ability to go out to other parts in the county and be able to help other residents. So I think the resource is the best way to go if we want to look at hitting as many people as we possibly can.
My only concern is we don't overanalyze and overstudy, because perfection's the enemy of just good enough. And there's a whole lot of folks that I believe should have the opportunity that everybody has in Carroll County. So.
Sure. Yeah, and well, Commissioner, let me assure you that once I have the green light to go, we will be moving full steam ahead and doing this very efficiently in order to get the most bang for our buck. Like I said, I've already got all of the pieces, so to speak, in place, ready to move forward the day that I'm saying you can do it. So
okay.
We will be back before you with what we come up with so that you understand where we're going. Now, just so that one other thing I need you to understand, Commissioner, with having a goal of having everybody connected in the county, for this particular build, it's going to cost us about $6,400. That $7 to $10 million is about $6,400 to $7,500 per resident. As we get out into the less dense areas, and Commissioners, there are some people that have roads that are over a mile long. You would be thinking about building to get to their facility you'd be looking at a $50,000 or $60,000 build just to get the one house. So I think that as we move forward, we need to continue to have these conversations. And is there a breaking point for us on cost per home to get service to them?
Mark, what's the next phase? Let's say we decided what to do with this and got those 4 areas covered. What's the next phase? Where are we trying to hit next? And do you have an estimate of how much that would cost?
The next phase would probably be to begin to have conversations with Comcast. I think that they are the next best option in the rural areas because they're already out there. They're covering a lot of territory. It's just they're not on a lot of roads because they don't meet the 20 miles per home requirement for the contract. So, and we already have these lists. That's how we came up with it, applying for the state funding for 2 of them. Would be to meet with Comcast and let's look at the rest of the builds that have been requested from the residents of Carroll County and work with Comcast to get the funding that they're going to need to do that to make it financially viable for them.
Do we have any idea how much funding would have to come from us?
We do not at this point, Commissioner. So I can again, that's an item that I can work on with Carol because I know she's got all the data. We just have to take and go through and get it added up.
Director Ripper, excuse my ignorance, but is there any type of satellite option or subsidy we could offer to the people in the furthest outreaches that don't have to wait the longest? Is there any type of supplemental or Band-Aid thing we could offer them in the interim?
Commissioner, we actually have about 9 service providers in Carroll County that are able to provide service. From what I understand and the residents that I've talked to, one of the issues with satellite, it is there, but it's also expensive. It's not an inexpensive technology for people to get. And again, if your home is in the middle of a bunch of trees and you are completely surrounded, things like Dish Network and those do not operate very well. They've got to have a clear line of sight to the satellite to be able to get the communications, which may mean, that there's nothing that prevents people, but again, there's a cost of putting up a 15, 20-foot pole on their property and putting the satellite dish on top of that to get above the tree line. But that's the issue with that.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Any other questions at this point on this part? All right, so now what I want to do is I do want to talk about the potential funding opportunities. The one issue that we do have is the FCC Rural Digital Opportunity Fund, also known as RDOF. There's a company by the name of Talkie, T-L-K-I-E, who won the RDOF qualified areas in Carroll County. The problem is that Talkie is a very small company. They've done very few builds, mostly on the Eastern Shore, and there is the suspicion that they do not have the financial resources that they will need to complete this. Now, the areas that Talkie won are in a lot of the areas that I showed you in the relatively large contiguous areas. That's what they would have wanted to bid on because, again, it made the most sense for them to build where there's a lot of density. I do not recommend that we wait for finding out where the Talkie grant stands. It will be at least August, if not December, before we know whether they've actually met the qualifications and if they're going to be able to complete the build. So what does that mean for us? If we build that network or we build it and partner with someone in those 4 areas, it does not prevent Talkie, if they were awarded the RDOF grant, from going out and being able to provide a second provider to those residents in Carroll County. So us moving forward with getting that area built out before the RDOF process is completed is my recommendation. I wouldn't wait for this, and we'll just have to see what happens. Quantum also bid, our local company, Quantum bid on these areas in the RDOF program, and they did not win. So they do not have any of the areas in Carroll County, but they were one of the bidders on those areas in Carroll County. And part of the problem is this FCC process is just a mess, to be perfectly honest. Talkie, if they didn't have the financial resources, should never have been allowed to bid on as much as they did. They evidently got most of Maryland and Pennsylvania. And don't appear to have the resources to be able to do the builds. If you go into an auction on this kind of money, most auctions, they're going to require you to have some kind of pre-qualification showing that you're financially able to meet whatever bids you make up. And the FCC does not have any of that for any of these. And it's not just talkie in this part of the country that was issues, but throughout the country, there were some very, very small companies who literally put in bids for tens and hundreds of millions of dollars, and they don't have the size or the resources to meet those. So we're not sure exactly where this whole RDOF thing is going to go in the future. Another one that was found by the grants office is the USDA Reconnect program. One of the problems we had in the past, commissioners, we couldn't take advantage of a lot of grant programs because we didn't have matching funds. If I've got $22 million sitting in an account, I now got matching funds. And the USDA Reconnect program has $300 million in federal aid to be used in broadband access in rural areas. So again, if we can take some of that money that we're going to have and leverage it with state and federal money, again, it's going to expand our ability to be able to get out to more areas. And then lastly, the state of Maryland does have some funding opportunities that we would now be able to take advantage of that we were not able to because we did not have matching funds. So that's just a really broad overview. I wish I could provide you more answers and had a little more solid on where we are, but I'm sure as in the next couple of weeks, the federal government gives us the guidelines, tells us how to apply for the funding, I can come back before you again and give you another update on where we are in those processes. And I can continue to update as we go through this. If you wanted to have a monthly or every other week update once this thing really gets rolling, I would be happy to do that for you.
Okay, Mark, you shared a lot of information. I appreciate it. I think there were some specific guidance that was provided. There was also some implied guidance that was provided. You know, and yeah, let's keep moving forward, but keep the eye on the ball on what the vision is and what the goal is, and that is get everybody lit. You know, at least that's my perspective. Any comments?
Yeah, Mark, I'd like to hear back from you an update when we find out how that money can be used and how we can get that money and where we can put it. Once we've got have those guidelines, I think it'd be it'd be the time to come back and let us know. That way we could actually start moving forward.
Commissioners, once we have that information, the staff will be presenting a variety of options for you, depending on what is allowed and what is. Everything from economic development to infrastructure and everything in between.
Okay.
Staff are already working on that across the board.
Great. And commissioners, just to kind of set an expectation level, we're looking at April now. I don't know how long it's going to take us to get here. I would say that it would probably be towards the end of the year before the first connections to the actual premise was made. Obviously, the construction will be done. I do have two concerns with construction. And I do have and why there is such a broad range in the cost of the build. The price of oil has a huge effect on the cost of getting this done. Everything from all of the vehicles that are needed in order to complete the work and the fuel, the cost of making the fiber is dependent upon the oil markets that are out there. So we need to keep that in mind. And then the other thing is we are not the only ones who are getting this much money. So my other concern is we're in good shape because we already have a contract with Skyline in order to be able to move forward. I don't have to go through any real processes there, but I'm sure that Skyline is using the same subs that most other counties in the state of Maryland are using. So, and if Comcast gets hit by all of the counties in the state at the same time, there may be some delay in construction because they are not going to have the crews that they need if they were to build all of this at one time. It just doesn't exist at this point. We've never had anything like this happen before. Carol, you want to say something?
Direct.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Commissioner Boucher.
I just wanted to say, Director Ripper, I always enjoy your briefings to us on command of the subject and ensuring for us that aren't knowledgeable of the subject to make decisions based upon your advice. So thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. All right, Carol, you have a comment you want to make?
Carol can't hear.
Unfortunately, we're going to say check your gear wheel, but that is something I'm told to say. So. And now you're frozen. There you
Okay,
go.
moving again.
Nope.
Nope, can't hear you. We'll get you, we'll send to you whatever she was going to say so that we make sure you have that information. I'm sure it has something to do with Comcast and their ability to be able to build, and may even have something to do with their process that you have to go through in order to get them to approve projects. So, but I'll make sure that you get that information from her.
Okay. Any further comments, discussion, questions? Okay, thank you very much. We're gonna move
Thank
into
you, commissioners.
Thank you.
Open admin. Do we have any callers by chance? Okay, no callers. I need a review and then approval of the minutes from April 6th. Our legal advice, where is it? Yep, from April 6th.
Motion to approve the closed minutes from April 6th, 12:05.
Okay,
Second.
I got a motion, got a second. Any discussion on that? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Let's go into agendas. Starting with April 19th, we got Monday, really on Monday, usually it's Tuesday, Bureau of Aging and Disabilities virtual meeting with Commissioner Wance attending. And then April 20th is a Planning and Zoning Commission meeting with Commissioner Wance. We will have our Board of County, we got open session at 1 p.m. It'll be a work session scheduled for our budget. At 2 p.m., there will be a Veterans Advisory Council. Commissioner Weaver and I are tentatively scheduled. We'll see where the work session goes, if there is one. On Wednesday, the 21st at 4 p.m. is an Environmental Advisory Council award ceremony with Commissioners Weaver, Frazier, and I attending. I guess it's in person up at Westminster.
Community Pond.
At the Community Pond.
Yep.
At 4:30, we have the Carroll Community College Board of Trustees meeting with Commissioner Wance attending. On Thursday, the BWI Business Partnership meeting will be in the morning. I will be attending. I do have availability for a second if they want to. I think it's the Ports. What's his name? Jim Ports speaking at that. At 9 a.m., we have open session with a backup scheduled work session for our budget. At 1 p.m., we have open session. I didn't think we had an open session at 1 p.m. on the 22nd. Priority Carroll, we have a request for approval for application submission and award acceptance of the courthouse security grant and circuit court, Carroll County. We have, state directives, the Ed Singer show, approval for stormwater management facility retrofit, introduction and request to proceed to public hearing for water and sewer spring amendment with Ms. Eisenberg, the Northeast Maryland Waste Disposal Authority membership renewal, and Mr. Casquay will walk us through that. We have a hold for, if necessary, a solid waste discussion with Mr. Engel and team. Request approval, exercise option to purchase the Escott Alban property through the Rural Legacy Program. Then we'll go into administrative session. We will have closed afterwards for land acquisition. Friday, nothing. Saturday is the Winfield softball baseball parade, and Commissioner Boucher will be attending that. Commissioner Wance has the podcast for the 25th. On the Following week, 26th, we have nothing. On 27th, we have a open session at 9 a.m. Proposed, where the FY22 release of the proposed budget will occur. And then request approval of the Kellard Foundation grant application for the Veteran Services Program. Conversation on fees on water and sewer amendments and annexation requests by Ms. Eisenberg. Briefing text amendment to Industrial 1 District Self-Service Storage in the Finksburg Sustainable Community Boundary. Go after a bid approval or request for a bid approval on installation of residential water meter vaults within the Freedom District. This is an ongoing project. It's been a lot of work being done there. Bid approval, request for bid approval for purchase of a Yale model for Hampstead wastewater treatment plant. And I'm not sure what that is, but that's okay.
It's different than the Harvard model.
What's that?
It's different than the Harvard model.
It's different than the Harvard model, exactly. Request approval to use term contract with HDI contractors to replace a failing stormwater pipe over in the Stone Ridge Court area. We are on another hold for, if necessary, additional solid waste management discussion. On Wednesday, nothing. On Thursday, we have open session with Mr. Singer. Starting us off, kicking us off, we'll have a public hearing on a community solar zoning text amendment. We will then go into a request for approval to apply and accept award for recreational trails program grant to support Hoshawa water wetlands boardwalk renovation. Request for bid approval for the environmental compliance and engineering survey. Another hold for solid waste discussion. I do not believe we're going to need all of these to take place, but that's okay. We'll then go into open admin Saturday on the 1st down in Eldersburg. The Safeway is going through a reopening and ribbon cutting. I will be attending. It's pretty exciting. Just to let you know about that is they requested a charity to serve. And so we were able to give them a couple local charities as they're doing that reopening. And then Commissioner Weaver has the podcast for that Sunday. We are now to go into closed.
No, I have a question on the
please.
agenda.
Sorry.
On Tuesday, April 27th, the release of the budget, does that mean we've already approved it, signed? I mean, we've already voted for it and so forth. So all of that's already been done before we release that. We're not voting on it that morning, are we?
No, you're not.
Okay.
Yeah, you will. Because staff has, there is a lot of, this is what Ted was referring to the other day.
Right.
That there's a lot of work between the time you approve your proposed budget and
Right.
they come out with the rec.
Just that I won't be there that day, and I want to make sure I didn't have to be there to vote on it. Okay.
Okay. We are now scheduled to go into closed land acquisition. Yeah, and then we will reconvene at 1 p.m. to go into a work session for our budget. So I need a motion to recess to go into closed.
Motion to go and close it for land acquisition.
Second.
Okay. And all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Good. And then we need a
Motion to
Motion
recess till 1 o'clock.
motion recess to 1 o'clock. Got that all? Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.